Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's
Let's
time
go.
main event. It's debate Tuesday, bro. Is that a thing? That doesn't even flow.
It's
How do we?
starting to become a thing. We have, for some reason, our podcasts are like right before or right during presidential
It's
debate.
crazy.
Right
Maybe this was a sign. Like both of us were just talking about this. How we're like, neither one of us are like, let's talk about politics all the time, people. And then it's like,
I thought you were about to. You know what I thought you were about to say? I thought you were about to be like, bro, this is a sign. We should run. We should put our hats in the ring.
What are we gonna run for? We're gonna run for what? What would okay? If you want to run,
president,
you want to be the vice president?
I'll be the vice president, but you have to like actually make me co-president. So like the
What's
news,
a co-president?
So the news is gonna have it where I'm the vice president, right?
Okay.
And you're the president. But then like we have to agree on everything.
That's weird. That's not realistic. That's like an abusive relationship.
I think also I think the entire country would crumble because you're gonna be worrying about cats and dogs, and I'm gonna be like, are we teaching evolution in the schools? And we're just gonna get nothing done, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, that could be like the first act. Like, let's just release all of the stuff in the Vatican, right? Just let it out. Let's just tell everybody what's really going on this earth, right? And once we'll know that evolution didn't happen the way
you're gonna like first cabinet meeting. You're gonna like, all right, we're releasing everything the FBI has today,
all of it, 100%.
And then someone would just stand up and shoot you, and that's what would happen.
And then you would take over. Wait, so are you implying right now that you're going to set this up out the gate? Is this a part of your whole plan?
Dude, it might be.
I appreciate you being transparent out the gate.
Maybe I'm the elite.
Imagine, bro, you know what that's called, right? You're controlled opposition.
Is that what
controlled
that means?
Opposition, dog. Yeah,
I've never heard that before.
You're basically pretending to be on the other team when actually you're on the opposite team as a plant.
That's crazy. I might be. That'd be crazy. That'd be cool. Being a spy would be fun. It'd be pretty nerve-wracking. Okay, let's stop fucking around. We're here to talk.
Well, we got 10 minutes before we do this thing. All right, guys. So if you guys are watching tonight, welcome, Prophet and Paradox. We're doing it again. I don't even know what number this is. I feel like we're getting some strife with 21. That's pretty cool. Blackjack, bro. I'm excited. Good things are happening. Today is the vice presidential debate. I have no clue what to expect.
I know nothing about either of these people.
Nothing at all. I've heard a couple Vance clips, and I genuinely mean like maybe 2 or 3. I've never heard this other dude talk. He looks extremely angry and aggressive, but I don't know. I saw the one clip where he like yeeted his son across the stage, like in front of millions of people, and was like super chill about that. And they were like psychologists breaking it down, saying,
"What? What'd you say?"
So he was walking with his son. I don't know if his son has special needs. I read a comment about that. Obviously, you can't believe what all the comments say. I don't know what this was, but basically what they were saying is that he like yanked his son, like just yanked him, like hurry the F up, dog. Like we walk, but he on stage on camera and he's like yoking him up a little bit. And then like there was all kinds of psychologist profilers who were like, yeah, this is an abusive household. This guy has no patience. They were, it was crazy. It was like, all right, I don't know. Maybe I don't know. But he does look aggressive even outside of it. He just looks like an angry person who has not pooped in a long time. Right. Maybe he just needs a good number 2. I don't know. But we'll find out tonight.
We'll find out. We'll see how this debate goes, I guess. I mean, like, I'm curious. So we're going to do it like last time. You and me are just going to kind of be quiet and just listen until the end of it?
Yeah, let's do that. We'll jump in if we get a minute, right? I'll stream it. I got it pulled up right here. We'll jump in if we get a minute. We'll listen to whatever they have to say. Like we'll talk during the commercials. We'll do a recap afterwards. Honestly, I'm open-minded, right? Like at the end of the day, we're not really voting for these people. They just come with whatever package that we choose. So it'll be interesting and maybe a good opportunity for us to be a little bit more objective, right? Maybe, Jonah, you'll tell the truth, Jonah. If you think that Walz is a psychopath, are you willing to admit it?
Yeah, for sure. Okay. If I think he's like a fucking idiot. Like, look, not every single... I mean, I feel like the vice president doesn't matter at all, basically. That's like the weird thing with this one, right? Like, how much credit or credit/blame does Kamala get for what happened during Biden's presidency? I think it's kind of like hard to tell. I don't think anyone has a really good answer for that. Because the vice president doesn't really do anything.
Nah, I'm gonna call bullshit, right? So one, I agree with you. I don't know that the vice president,
like the most active. Just I'll finish this real quick. The most active vice president I know of is Dick Cheney with Bush. Other than that, I don't know how Joe Biden influenced Obama. I don't know how like I feel like what I forgot his name. Who was Trump's vice president?
Pence.
I'm blanking. Pence.
Pence.
Do you think Trump gave a fuck what Pence thought? I feel like no, right? I mean,
Trump, I don't think that they sit in as an advisory role though, right? Like I think that most vice presidential choices are really more focused on the ticket. What is going to look better as my
running, right?
My date to the prom so I can win, that's really what it comes down to. Now, here's the thing though. The reason why I call bullshit is I don't know your personality type. I think I have an idea, right? No. Let me change this. I do know your personality type, right?
We've known each other for a while now.
What I meant is I can't speak to what you would do. I believe I know your personality type. I know my personality type. Unless you specifically tell me not to, I can't imagine either one of us sitting in that office as vice presidents for 4 years, staring around. Like we're gonna lose our mind.
I consider the vice president, I feel like their main role in my head, I don't actually, this would be very interesting if someone actually knew, because constitutionally they have no fucking power. They just don't, right? Just constitutionally they don't. In my head, what the vice president does is they're the chief advisor. Like they're the main consultant. You're like my boy. You're like, dude, what do you think I should do here? Iran is fucking sending missiles to Israel. Do we bomb them? Like what? Like we need a fucking meeting, right? That's how I view the vice president. So it's not like they do nothing, but I feel like
no, I think you're right.
I'm wrong, but
I think that's the way it should be looked at. I just don't think that's how it plays out. But I would imagine that's president to president. Every president is going to be different. But here's what I know. I do believe that vice presidents have the ability to do things. In fairness, I have, because like I've said this before, I'm not a huge politics guy. I really never have been. I'm talking about it because it's important right now. And I feel like as much as you don't necessarily think so, I have a pretty neutral stance. It probably sounds less neutral because things have been so polarizing. You kind of have to seemingly pick a side, even if you don't necessarily.
Also, you and I are most of the time disagreeing. Also,
yeah, correct. But here's the thing: I genuinely have never really paid attention to politics as much as an average person into politics does. When I look at situations like this, I think, okay, for example, Kamala was in charge of the border. She was responsible for the border. It was her one primary focus job. I feel like regardless of all of the VPs should do this or VPs don't have the right, or it's just a feeling, okay, cool. What the bottom line is, if you were given a task, you at least have the authority to get that job done. Because I'm telling you right now, if I'm the guy that is in charge of Border Patrol, guess what? Vice president outranks me in basic chains of command, right? So maybe I don't have necessarily as much congressional pull. That's politic games conversations. But if I'm responsible for the border, I bet I can get stuff done. I bet I can move forward. And when I look at, I don't know if I sent this in a group chat. When I looked at a post Elon Musk shared of the head of the Border Patrol, he basically was like, it's interesting how Kamala Harris has been responsible for fixing problems with the border, but we haven't been able to get her to show up for 4 years. But now she shows up for a 5-minute photo op and wants to pretend she's been doing something. When the head of the thing that you're supposed to be overseeing says that, it's telling me that you genuinely you've just not done your job.
I want to know how much power Borders has, because I don't actually know. Like, potentially they control it really well. But like, I know, for instance, she can't just, like, let's say she can't just build a wall. She doesn't have that power. That requires the president, right? That requires an executive action.
It requires bricks.
It requires like more than just someone overseeing what's already happening. So I would just like to know what a Border czar is responsible for. I'm going to be honest. I have no fucking clue who the previous Border czars were. I don't know what the hell they did.
I didn't know that. I thought that was a joke they were using. I thought they were making fun of her.
Yeah,
I didn't know that was a real thing.
I didn't know we had czars.
Why?
Why do we have czars, Keanu? That's more weird.
I don't know. I did not know that was a thing. Yeah, I thought it was legit a joke.
That's what are we, Russia? Like what the hell's going on?
Here's the thing, bro. Tell the truth. If you are tasked with that responsibility, let's say they chose Korchin over Harris, Korchin over Kamala, I would vote for bro. If you ran as a Democrat today, I would vote for you before I'd vote for her. Not even lying. Not even lying. But here's the thing. I feel like if you were the border czar, you're getting shit done. You're going out there. You're doing something.
I'd do something. I agree. I would go to the border and be like,
you would at least show up.
What are we doing, guys? What's happening here? Is anyone doing anything?
No, show up. Hey, where are the good burritos? Tell the truth, bro. Like, we're right here.
Do any of you speak Spanish? Anybody? None of you speak Spanish? We kind of need some Spanish speakers here.
Fun fact: don't ever try to sneak. If you, for my Latinos out there,
I'll give credit. I don't know. I will say I don't know what a border czar is supposed to be doing, but I will say that it's pretty whack. She never visited the border with her being the border czar.
Yeah,
that's pretty weird. I'm gonna throw it out there. She probably should have. But yeah, I don't know. Like, I just don't know. I just don't know what that role even is. It's like a role I've never heard of before. I didn't be real with me.
We're going live, bro. We're going live.
What do you mean? Oh, it's starting? Are you seeing it?
Yep.
Okay, just real quick, one question. Did you honestly know there even was a border czar before her?
No idea.
I did.
I legit thought this was a fake role.
Yeah,
I legit thought it was a fake role.
All right, here we go. I'll shut up.
The cameras. That's right. Well, we have the vice presidential debate coming up in a moment. It will be moderated by our own Norah O'Donnell and Margaret Brennan. Ohio Senator J.D. Vance and Minnesota Governor Tim Walz take the stage. Well, they've taken the stage, so stick with us here and join us also on our streaming channel, CBS News 24/7, for exclusive content.
35 seconds.
I'm going to go to the bathroom. I'll be back.
Thank you for joining
us. Wash your hands. All right, guys. Tell us in the chat, who do you think is going to win this thing? If you guys have actually watched these dudes chat, would be interested in hearing your guys' opinion on how this is going to play out. Because I genuinely have no idea. Jonah's going to wash his hands. What I was going to say, Vance Giamaro says Vance is going to win it. Is it because you just are voting for that side and so you're just sticking with your team? Or is there something about this dude that you actually think is going to put him in a stronger position? Genuinely curious about that. Oh, we're not listening. Let's see what they got to say.
Who hope to become vice president of the United States. Democratic Governor Tim Walz of Minnesota and Republican Senator J.D. Vance of Ohio.
Now, this is likely the final debate of this election cycle, and voting is already underway in 20 states. CBS News polling shows this remains a race either presidential candidate could win. The CBS News vice presidential debate starts now.
Fight for every single vote, and we're going to take this country back.
And we are ready to continue to build the future together.
We're going to turn this whole country red with President Donald J. Trump's leadership.
You know what's at the end of this little journey? Kamala Harris as the next president of the United States.
This is a CBS News special, live from CBS News headquarters in New York. America Decides, the vice presidential debate.
Good evening, I'm Norah O'Donnell, and thank you for joining us for tonight's CBS News vice presidential debate. We want to welcome our viewers on CBS, on other networks here in the U.S. and around the world. We have a consequential night ahead, and our focus is the issues that matter to you, the voter. Let's introduce the candidates. Minnesota's Democratic Governor Tim Walz and Ohio's Republican Senator J.D. Vance, tonight meeting for the first time.
I'm Margaret Brennan. In order to have a thoughtful and civil debate, these are the rules that both campaigns have agreed to. Questions will be directed at one candidate who will have 2 minutes to respond. The other candidate will be allowed 2 minutes for rebuttal. Then each candidate will get another minute to make further points, with an additional 1 minute each at the discretion of the moderator. The primary role of the moderators is to facilitate the debate between the candidates, enforce the rules, and provide the candidates with the opportunity to fact-check claims made by each other.
CBS News reserves the right to mute the
Okay,
candidate.
just real quick. I love
to
just leaving
maintain
that
decorum.
below, like
We have
as
not
like a
shared
like
the
a
questions or
That should be,
topics
yeah,
with the
that's the
campaign.
borderline
the
caption.
entire
The whole
time.
thing.
Governor, Senator, thank you for joining us. Let's get started. Tonight, our country is facing several unfolding crises. The Middle East is on the brink of war. Americans are suffering from the catastrophic impact of Hurricane Helene. And now a labor strike as 25,000 dock workers from Maine to Texas are picketing. We're going to begin tonight with the Middle East. Margaret.
Thank you, Nora. Earlier today, Iran launched its largest attack yet on Israel, but that attack failed thanks to joint U.S. and Israeli defensive action. President Biden has deployed more than 40,000 U.S. military personnel and assets to that region over the past year to try to prevent a regional war. Iran is weakened, but the U.S. still considers it the largest state sponsor of terrorism in the world, and it has drastically reduced the time it would take to develop a nuclear weapon. It is down now to 1 or 2 weeks' time. Governor Walz, if you were the final voice in the Situation Room, would you support or oppose a preemptive strike by Israel on Iran? You have 2 minutes.
Well, thank you. And thank you for those joining at home tonight. Let's keep in mind where this started. October 7th, Hamas terrorists massacred over 1,400 Israelis and took prisoners. Israel's ability to be able to defend itself is absolutely fundamental. Getting its hostages back, fundamental, and ending the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. But the expansion of Israel and its proxies is an absolute fundamental necessity for the United States to have the steady leadership there. You saw it experienced today, where along with our Israeli partners and our coalition, able to stop the incoming attack. But what's fundamental here is that steady leadership is going to matter. It's clear, and the world saw it on that debate stage a few weeks ago. A nearly 80-year-old Donald Trump talking about crowd sizes is not what we need in this moment. But it's not just that. It's those that were closest to Donald Trump that understand how dangerous he is when the world is this dangerous. His chief of staff, John Kelly, said that he was the most flawed human being he'd ever met. And both of his secretaries of defense and his national security advisors said he should be nowhere near the White House. Now, the person closest to them, Donald Trump, said he's unfit for the highest office. That was Senator Vance. What we've seen out of Vice President Harris is we've seen steady leadership. We've seen a calmness that is able to draw on the coalitions to bring them together, understanding that our allies matter. When our allies see Donald Trump turn towards Vladimir Putin, turn towards North Korea, when we start to see that type of fickleness around holding the coalitions together, we will stay committed. And as the vice president said today we will protect our forces and our allied forces, and there will be consequences.
Governor, your time is up. Senator Vance, the same question. Would you support or oppose a preemptive strike by Israel on Iran? You have 2 minutes.
So, Margaret, I want to answer the question. First of all, thanks, Governor. Thanks to CBS for hosting the debate. And thanks, most importantly, to the American people who are watching this evening and caring enough about this country to pay attention to this vice presidential debate. I want to answer the question, but I want to actually give an introduction to myself a little bit because I recognize a lot of Americans don't know who either one of us are. I was raised in a working class family. My mother required food assistance for periods of her life. My grandmother required Social Security help to raise me. And she raised me in part because my own mother struggled with addiction for a big chunk of my early life. I went to college on the GI Bill after I enlisted in the Marine Corps and served in Iraq. And so I stand here asking to be your vice president with extraordinary gratitude for this country, for the American dream that made it possible for me to live my dreams. And most importantly, I know that a lot of you are worried about the chaos in the world and the feeling that the American dream is unattainable. I want to try to convince you tonight over the next 90 minutes that if we get better leadership in the White House, if we get Donald Trump back in the White House, the American dream is going to be attainable once again. Now, to answer this particular question, we have to remember that as much as Governor Walz just accused Donald Trump of being an agent of chaos, Donald Trump actually delivered stability in the world, and he did it by establishing effective deterrence. People were afraid of stepping out of line. Iran, which launched this attack, has received over $100 billion in unfrozen assets thanks to the Kamala Harris administration. What do they use that money for? They use it to buy weapons that they're now launching against our allies, and God forbid, potentially launching against the United States as well. Donald Trump recognized that for people to fear the United States, you needed peace through strength. They needed to recognize that if they got out of line, the United States global leadership would put stability and peace back in the world. Now, you asked about a preemptive strike, Margaret, and I want to answer the question. Look, it is up to Israel what they think they need to do to keep their country safe, and we should support our allies wherever they are when they're fighting the bad guys. I think that's the right approach to take with the Israel question.
Thank you, Senator. Governor Walz, do you care to respond to any of the allegations?
Well, look, Donald Trump was in office. We'll sometimes hear a revisionist history, but when Donald Trump was in office, it was Donald Trump who we had a coalition of nations that had boxed Iran's nuclear program in, the inability to advance it. Donald Trump pulled that program and put nothing else in its place. So Iran is closer to a nuclear weapon than they were before because of Donald Trump's fickle leadership. And when Iran shot down an American aircraft in international airspace, Donald Trump tweeted, because that's the standard diplomacy of Donald Trump. And when Iranian missiles did fall near U.S. troops and they received traumatic brain injuries, Donald Trump wrote it off as headaches. Look, our allies understand that Donald Trump is fickle. He will go to whoever has the most flattery or where it makes sense to him. Steady leadership like you witnessed today, like you witnessed in April. Both Iranian attacks were repelled. Our coalition is strong, and we need the steady leadership that Kamala Harris is providing.
Senator Vance, the U.S. did have a diplomatic deal with Iran to temporarily pause parts of its nuclear program, and President Trump did exit that deal. He recently said, just 5 days ago, the U.S. must now make a diplomatic deal with Iran because the consequences are impossible. Did he make a mistake? You have 1 minute.
Well, first of all, Margaret, diplomacy is not a dirty word, but I think that's something that Governor Walz just said is quite extraordinary. You yourself just said Iran is as close to a nuclear weapon today as they have ever been. And Governor Walz, you blame Donald Trump. Who has been the vice president for the last 3.5 years? And the answer is your running mate, not mine. Donald Trump consistently made the world more secure. Now, we talk about what the sequence of events that led us to where we are right now, and you can't ignore October the 7th, which I appreciate Governor Walz bringing up. But when did Iran and Hamas and their proxies attack Israel? It was during the administration of Kamala Harris. So Governor Walz can criticize Donald Trump's tweets, but effective, smart diplomacy and peace through strength is how you bring stability back to a very broken world. Donald Trump has already done it once before. Ask yourself at home, when was the last time, I'm 40 years old, when was the last time that an American president didn't have a major conflict break out? The only answer is during the 4 years that Donald Trump was president.
Gentlemen, we have a lot to get to. Nora?
Margaret, thank you. Let's turn now to Hurricane Helene. The storm could become one of the deadliest on record. More than 160 people are dead and hundreds more are missing. Scientists say climate change makes these hurricanes larger, stronger, and more deadly because of the historic rainfall. Senator Vance, according to CBS News polling, 7 in 10 Americans and more than 60% of Republicans under the age of 45 favor the U.S. taking steps to try and reduce climate change. Senator, what responsibility would the Trump administration have to try and reduce the impact of climate change? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Sure. So first of all, let's start with the hurricane because it's an unbelievable, unspeakable human tragedy. I just saw today actually a photograph of 2 grandparents on a roof with a 6-year-old child, and it was the last photograph ever taken of them because the roof collapsed and those innocent people lost their lives. And I'm sure Governor Walz joins me in saying our hearts go out to those innocent people, our prayers go out to them, and we want as robust and aggressive as a federal response as we can get to save as many lives as possible, and then of course afterwards to help the people people in those communities rebuild. I mean, these are communities that I love. Some of them I know very personally in Appalachia, all across the Southeast. They need their government to do their job. And I commit that when Donald Trump is president again, the government will put the citizens of this country first when they suffer from a disaster. Now, Nora, you asked about climate change. I think this is a very important issue. Look, a lot of people are justifiably worried about all these crazy weather patterns. I think it's important for us, first of all, to say, Donald Trump and I support clean air, clean water. We want the environment to be cleaner and safer. But one of the things that I've noticed some of our Democratic friends talking a lot about is a concern about carbon emissions, this idea that carbon emissions drives all of the climate change. Well, let's just say that's true, just for the sake of argument, so we're not arguing about weird science. Let's just say that's true. Well, if you believe that, what would you want to do? The answer is that you'd want to reshore as much American manufacturing as possible, and you'd want to produce as much energy as possible in the United States of America because we're the cleanest economy in the entire world. What have Kamala Harris's policies actually led to? More energy production in China, more manufacturing overseas, more doing business in some of the dirtiest parts of the entire world. And when I say that, I mean the amount of carbon emissions they're doing per unit of economic output. So if we actually care about getting cleaner air and cleaner water, the best thing to do is to double down and invest in American workers and the American people. And unfortunately, Kamala Harris has done exactly the opposite.
Governor Walz, you have 2 minutes to respond.
Well, we got close to an agreement because all those things are happening. Look, first of all, it is a horrific tragedy with this hurricane. And my heart goes out to the folks that are down there in contact with the governors. I serve as co-chair of the Council of Governors as we work together on these emergency managements. Governors know no partisanship. They work together. So all of the governors and the emergency responders are on the ground. Those happen on the front end. The federal government comes in, makes sure they're there to that we recover, but we're still in that phase where we need to make sure that they're staying there, staying focused. Now, look, coming back to the climate change issue, there's no doubt this thing roared onto the scene faster and stronger than anything we've seen. Senator Vance has said that there's a climate problem in the past. Donald Trump called it a hoax and then joked that these things would make more beachfront property to be able to invest in. What we've seen out of the Harris administration now, the Biden-Harris administration, is we've seen this investment. We've seen massive investments, the biggest in global history that we've seen in the Inflation Reduction Act, has created jobs all across the country. 2,000 in Jeffersonville, Ohio, taking the EV technology that we invented and making it here. 200,000 jobs across the country. The largest solar manufacturing plant in North America sits in Minnesota. But my farmers know climate change is real. They've seen 500-year droughts, 500-year floods back to back. But what they're doing is adapting, and this has allowed them to tell me, look, I harvest corn, I harvest soybean, and I harvest wind. We are producing more natural gas and more oil at any time than we ever have. We're also producing more clean energy. So the solution for us is to continue to move forward, that climate change is real. Reducing our impact is absolutely critical, but this is not a false choice. You can do that at the same time you're creating the jobs that we're seeing all across the country. That's exactly what this administration has done. We are seeing us becoming an energy superpower for the future, not just the current. And that's what absolutely makes sense. And then we start thinking about how do we mitigate these disasters.
Thank you. Senator, I want to give you an opportunity to respond there. The governor mentioned that President Trump has called climate change a hoax. Do you agree?
Well, look, what the president has said is that if the Democrats, in particular Kamala Harris and her leadership, if they really believe that climate change is serious, what they would be doing is more manufacturing and more energy production in the United States of America, and that's not what they're doing. So clearly, Kamala Harris herself doesn't believe her own rhetoric on this. If she did, she would actually agree with Donald Trump's energy policies. Now, something Governor Walz said I think is important to touch upon, because when we talk about clean energy, I think that's a slogan that often the Democrats will use here. And I'm talking, of course, about the Democratic leadership. And the real issue is that if you're spending hundreds of millions or even billions of dollars of American taxpayer money on solar panels that are made in China, number one, you're going to make the economy dirtier. We should be making more of those solar panels here in the United States of America. Some of them are, Tim, but a lot of them are being made overseas in China, especially the components that go into those solar panels. So if you really want to make the environment cleaner, you've got to invest in more energy production. We haven't built a nuclear facility, I think, one in the past 40 years.
Senator.
Natural gas, we got to invest more in it. Kamala Harris has done the opposite. That's raised energy prices and also meant that we're doing
Senator,
worse by the climate.
Senator, your time is up. Governor, would you like to respond?
Well, look, we're producing more natural gas than we ever have. There's no moratorium on that. We're producing more oil, but the folks know, and like I said, again, these are not liberal folks. These are not folks that are Green New Deal folks. These are farmers that have been drought one year, massive flooding the next year. They understand that it makes sense. Look, our number one export cannot be topsoil from erosion from these massive storms. We saw it in Minnesota this summer. And thinking about how do we respond to that, we're thinking ahead on this. And what Kamala Harris has been able to do in Minnesota, we're starting to weatherproof some of these things. The infrastructure law that was passed allows us to think about mitigation in the future. How do we make sure that we're protecting by burying our power lines? How do we make sure that we're protecting lakefronts and things that we're seeing more and more of? But to call it a hoax and to take the oil company executives to Mar-a-Lago, say, give me money for my campaign and I'll let you do whatever you want. We can be smarter about that. And an all above energy policy is exactly what she's doing, creating those jobs right here.
Governor, your time is up. The overwhelming consensus among scientists is that the Earth's climate is warming at an unprecedented rate. Margaret?
Thank you, Nora. We're going to turn now to immigration. The crisis at the U.S.-Mexico border consistently ranks as one of the top issues for American voters. Senator Vance, your campaign is pledging to carry out the largest mass deportation plan in American history and to use the U.S. military to do so. Could you be more specific about exactly how this will work? For example, would you deport parents who have entered the U.S. illegally and separate them from any of their children who were born on U.S. soil? You have 2 minutes.
So first of all, Margaret, before we talk about deportations, we have to stop the bleeding. We have a historic immigration crisis because Kamala Harris started and said that she wanted to undo all of Donald Trump's border policies. 94 executive orders suspending deportations, decriminalizing illegal aliens, massively increasing the asylum fraud that exists in our system. That has opened the floodgates. And what it's meant is that a lot of fentanyl is coming into our country. I had a mother who struggled with opioid addiction and has gotten clean. I don't want people who are struggling with addiction to be deprived of their second chance because Kamala Harris let in fentanyl into our communities at record levels. So you've got to stop the bleeding. You've got to re-implement Donald Trump's border policies, build the wall, re-implement deportations. And that gets me to your point, Margaret, about what do we actually do? So we've got 25 million illegal aliens who are here in the country. What do we do with them? I think the first thing that we do is we start with the criminal migrants. About 1 million of those people have committed some form of crime in addition to crossing the border illegally. I think you start with deportations on those folks. And then I think you make it harder for illegal aliens to undercut the wages of American workers. A lot of people will go home if they can't work for less than minimum wage in our own country. And by the way, that'll be really good for our workers who just want to earn a fair wage for doing a good day's work. And the final point, Margaret, is you ask about family separation. Right now in this country, Margaret, we have 320,000 children that the Department of Homeland Security has effectively lost. Some of them have been sex trafficked. Some of them hopefully are at homes with their families. Some of them have been used as drug trafficking mules. The real family separation policy in this country is unfortunately Kamala Harris's wide open southern border. And I'd ask my fellow Americans to remember when she came into office, she said she was going to do this. Real leadership would be saying, you know what, I screwed up. We're going to go back to Donald Trump's border policies. I wish that she would do that. It would be good for all of us.
Governor, do you care to respond to any of those specific allegations, including that the vice president is, quote, letting in fentanyl and using kids as drug mules, among other things regarding children?
The drug mule is not true, but I will say about this, about the fentanyl, because this is a crisis of this, the opioid crisis. And the good news on this is the last 12 months saw the largest decrease in opioid deaths in our nation's history, 30% decrease in Ohio, but there's still more work to do. But let's go back to this on immigration. Kamala Harris was the attorney general of the largest state and a border state in California. She's the only person in this race who prosecuted transnational gangs for human trafficking and drug interventions. But look, we all want to solve this. Most of us want to solve this, and that is the United States Congress. That's the Border Patrol agents. That's the Chamber of Commerce. That's most Americans out here. That's why we had the fairest and the toughest bill on immigration that this nation's seen. It was crafted by a conservative senator from Oklahoma, James Lankford. I know him. He's super conservative, but he's a man of principle, wants to get it done. Democrats and Republicans worked on this piece of legislation. The Border Patrol said, this is what we need in here. These are the experts. And the Chamber of Commerce and the Wall Street Journal said, pass this thing. Kamala Harris helped get there. 1,500 new border agents, detection for drugs, DOJ money to speed up these the adjudications on this, just what America wants. But as soon as I was getting ready to pass and actually tackle this, Donald Trump said no, told them to vote against it because it gives him a campaign issue. It gives him to, what would Donald Trump talk about if we actually did some of these things? And they need to be done by the legislature. You can't just do this through the executive branch. So look, we have the options to do this. Donald Trump had 4 years. He had 4 years to do this. And he promised you, America, how easy it would be. I'll build you a big, beautiful wall, and Mexico will pay for it. Less than 2% of that wall got built, and Mexico didn't pay a dime. But here we are again, 9 years after he came down that escalator, dehumanizing people and telling them what he was going to do. As far as the deportation plan, at one point, Senator Vance said it was so unworkable to be laughable. So that's where we're at. Pass the bill, she'll sign it.
Governor, your time is up. Senator, the question was, will you separate parents from their children, even if their kids are U.S. citizens? You have 1 minute.
Margaret, my point is that we already have massive child separations thanks to Kamala Harris's open border. And I didn't accuse Kamala Harris of inviting drug mules. I said that she enabled the Mexican drug cartels to operate freely in this country. And we know that they use children as drug mules, and it is a disgrace, and it has to stop. Look, I think what Tim said just doesn't pass the smell test. For 3 years, Kamala Harris went out bragging that she was going to undo Donald Trump's border policy. She did exactly that. We had a record number of illegal crossings. We had a record number of fentanyl coming into our country. And now that she's running for president, or a few months before, she says that somehow she got religion and cared a lot about a piece of legislation. The only thing that she did when she became the vice president, when she became the appointed border czar, was to undo 94 Donald Trump executive actions that opened the border. This problem is leading to massive problems in the United States of America. Parents who can't afford health care, schools that are overwhelmed. It's got to stop, and it will when Donald Trump is president again.
Senator, your time is up. Governor, what about our CBS News polling, which does show that a majority of Americans, more than 50%, support mass deportations?
Look, we fix this issue with a bill that is necessary. But the issue on this is what happens when you don't want to solve it. You demonize it. And we saw this. And Senator Vance, and it surprises me on this, talking about and saying, I will create stories to bring attention to this. That vilified a large number of people who were here legally in the community of Springfield. The Republican governor said, it's not true. Don't do it. There's consequences for this. There's consequences. We could come together. Senator Lankford did it. We could come together and solve this if we didn't let Donald Trump continue to make it an issue. And the consequences in Springfield were the governor had to send state law enforcement to escort kindergartners to school. I believe Senator Vance wants to solve this, but by standing with Donald Trump and not working together to find a solution, it becomes a talking point. And when it becomes a talking point like this, we dehumanize and villainize other human beings.
Tim,
Governor, your time is up. Senator, I'll give you 1 minute, but let me just ask you the question first. The governor has made the point, and I think as a sitting lawmaker, you know that Congress controls the purse strings and any funding. So you have said repeatedly that Donald Trump would, through executive action, solve this. Do you disagree that Congress controls the purse strings and would need to support many of the changes that you would actually want to implement? You have 1 minute.
Look, Margaret, first of all, the gross majority of what we need to do at the southern border is just empowering law enforcement to do their job. I've been to the southern border more than our border czar, Kamala Harris, has been, and it's actually heartbreaking because the Border Patrol agents, they just want to be empowered to do their job. Of course, additional resources would help, but most of this is about the president and the vice president empowering our law enforcement to say, if you try to come across the border illegally, you've got to stay in Mexico, you've got to go back through proper proper channels. Now, Governor Walz brought up the community of Springfield, and he's very worried about the things that I've said in Springfield. Look, in Springfield, Ohio, and in communities all across this country, you've got schools that are overwhelmed. You've got hospitals that are overwhelmed. You have got housing that is totally unaffordable because we brought in millions of illegal immigrants to compete with Americans for scarce homes. The people that I'm most worried about in Springfield, Ohio, are the American citizens who have had their lives destroyed by Kamala Harris's open border. It is a disgrace, Tim. And I actually think, I agree with you. I think you want to solve this problem, but I don't think that Kamala Harris does.
Senator, your time is up. Governor, you have 1 minute to respond.
Yeah, well, it is law enforcement that asked for the bill. They helped craft it. They're the ones that supported it. That's because they know we need to do this. Look, this issue of continuing to bring this up, of not dealing with it, of blaming migrants for everything. On housing, we could talk a little bit about Wall Street speculators buying up housing and making them less affordable, but it becomes a blame. Look, this bill also gives the money necessary to adjudicate. I agree. It should not take 7 years for an asylum claim to be done. This bill gets it done in 90 days. Then you start to make a difference in this and you start to adhere to what we know, American principles. I don't talk about my faith a lot, but Matthew 25:40 talks about to the least amongst us, you do unto me. I think that's true of most Americans. They simply want order to it. This bill does it. It's funded. It's supported by the people who do it. And it lets us keep our dignity about how we treat other people.
Thank you, Governor. And just to clarify for our viewers, Springfield, Ohio does have a large number of Haitian migrants who have legal status, temporary protected status.
Well, Margaret, but
thank you, Senator. We have so much to get to.
Margaret, I think it's important
We're
because
going to turn now to the economy. Thank
Margaret,
you.
the rules were that
The
you guys
economy,
weren't going to
we're-
fact check, and since you're fact checking me, I think it's important to say what's actually going on. So there's an application called the CBP One app, where you can go on as an illegal migrant, apply for asylum or apply for parole, and be granted legal status at the wave of a Kamala Harris open border wand. That is not a person coming in, applying for a green card and waiting for 10 years. That is the facilitation of illegal immigration, Margaret, by our own
Thank you, Senator, for
leadership.
describing the legal process. We have so much to get to, Senator.
Those
We have
laws
so
have been on
much-
the books since 1990.
Thank you, gentlemen.
The
We
CBP
wanna have-
One app has not been on the books since 1990. It's something that Kamala Harris created, Margaret.
Gentlemen, the audience can't hear you because your mics are cut. We have so much we want to get to. Thank you for explaining the legal process. Nora.
Thank you, Margaret. The economy is a top concern for voters. Each of your campaigns has released an economic plan. So let's talk about the specifics. Governor Walz, Vice President Harris unveiled a plan that includes billions in tax credits for manufacturing, housing, and a renewed child tax credit. The Wharton School says your proposals will increase the nation's deficit by $1.2 trillion. How would you pay for that without ballooning the deficit? Governor, I'll give you 2 minutes.
Yeah, thank you. And Kamala Harris and I do believe in the middle class because that's where we come from. We both grew up in that. We understand. So those of you out there listening tonight, you're hearing a lot of stuff back and forth, and it's good. It's healthy. That's what this is supposed to happen. You should be listening. How's this going to impact me? The bold forward plan that Kamala Harris put out there is talking about this housing issue. The one thing is there's 3 million new houses proposed under this plan with down payment assistance on the front end to get you in a house. A house is much more than just an asset to be traded somewhere. It's foundational to where you're at. And then making sure that the things you buy every day, whether they be prescription drugs or other things, that there's fairness in that. Look, the $35 insulin is a good thing, but it costs $5 to make insulin. They were charging $800 before this law went into effect. As far as the housing goes, I've seen it in Minnesota. 12% more houses in Minneapolis, prices went down on rent 4%. It's working. And then making sure tax cuts go to the middle class. $6,000 child tax credit, we have one in Minnesota, reduces childhood poverty by a third. We save money in the long run, and we do the right thing for families. And then getting businesses off the ground. The law as it stands right now is $5,000 tax credit for small business, increasing that to $50,000. Now, this is a philosophical difference between us. Donald Trump made a promise, and I'll give you this. He kept it. He took folks to Mar-a-Lago, said, you're rich as hell, I'm going to give you a tax cut. He gave the tax cuts that predominantly went to the top class. What happened there was an $8 trillion increase in the national debt, the largest ever. Now he's proposing a 20% consumption or sales tax on everything we bring in. Everyone agrees, including businesses, it would be destabilizing it. It would increase inflation and potentially lead to a recession. Look, this is simple for you. Where are we going? Kamala Harris has said to do the things she wants to do. We'll just ask the wealthiest to pay their fair share. When you do that, our system works best. More people are participating in it, and folks have the things that they need.
Senator, I want to give you a moment to respond on that. But similarly, the Wharton School has done an analysis of the Trump plan and says it would increase the nation's deficit by $5.8 trillion. My question is the same for you. How do you pay for all that without ballooning the deficit? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Well, first of all, you're going to hear a lot from Tim Walz this evening, and you just heard it in the answer, a lot of what Kamala Harris proposes to do. And some of it, I'll be honest with you, it even sounds pretty good. Here's what you won't hear, is that Kamala Harris has already done it. Because she's been the vice president for 3.5 years. She had the opportunity to enact all of these great policies. And what she's actually done instead is drive the cost of food higher by 25%, drive the cost of housing higher by about 60%. Open the American southern border and make middle-class life unaffordable for a large number of Americans. If Kamala Harris has such great plans for how to address middle-class problems, then she ought to do them now. Not when asking for a promotion, but in the job the American people gave her 3.5 years ago. And the fact that she isn't tells you a lot about how much you can trust her actual plans. Now, Donald Trump's economic plan is not just a plan, but it's also a record. A lot of those same economists attack Donald Trump's plans, and they have PhDs, but they don't have common sense and they don't have wisdom, because Donald Trump's economic policies delivered the highest take-home pay in a generation in this country, 1.5% inflation, and to boot, peace and security all over the world. So when people say that Donald Trump's economic plan doesn't make sense, I say, look at the record. He delivered rising take-home pay for American workers. Now, Tim admirably admits that they want to undo the Trump tax cuts. But if you look at what was so different about Donald Trump's tax cuts, even from previous Republican tax cut plans, is that a lot of those resources went to giving more take-home pay to middle class and working class Americans. It was passed in 2017, and you saw an American economic boom unlike we've seen in a generation in this country. That is a record that I'm proud to run on, and we're going to get back to that common sense wisdom so that you can afford to live the American dream again. I know a lot of you are struggling. I know a lot of you are worried about paying the bills. It's going to stop when Donald Trump brings back common sense to this country.
Governor, do you want to respond to that? What has Kamala Harris done for the middle class?
Yeah, well, Kamala Harris's day one was Donald Trump's failure on COVID that led to the collapse of our economy. We were already before COVID in a manufacturing recession, but 10 million people out of work, largest percentage since the Great Depression. 9 million jobs closed on that. That was day one, whether it was the Infrastructure Act or other things we moved. Now, you made a question about experts, said this. I've made a note of this. Economists can't be trusted. Science can't be trusted. National security folks can't be trusted. Look, if you're going to be president, you don't have all the answers. Donald Trump believes he does. My pro tip of the day is this. If you need heart surgery, listen to the people at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota, not Donald Trump. And the same thing goes with this. And I ask you out there, teachers, nurses, truck drivers, or whatever, how is it fair that you're paying your taxes every year and Donald Trump hasn't paid any federal tax in the last 15 years, and the last year as president? That's what's wrong with the system. There's a way around it, and he's bragged about that. We're just asking for fairness in it, and that's all you want.
You have a minute.
Governor, you say trust the experts. But those same experts for 40 years said that if we shipped our manufacturing base off to China, we'd get cheaper goods. They lied about that. They said if we shipped our industrial base off to other countries, to Mexico and elsewhere, it would make the middle class stronger. They were wrong about that. They were wrong about the idea that if we made America less self-reliant, less productive in our own nation, that it would somehow make us better off, and they were wrong about it. And for the first time in a generation, Donald Trump had the wisdom and the courage to say to that bipartisan consensus, we're not doing it anymore. We're bringing American manufacturing back. We're unleashing American energy. We're going to make more of our own stuff. And this isn't just an economic issue. I mean, I've got 3 beautiful little kids at home, 7, 4, and 2, and I love them very much, and I hope they're in bed right now. But look, so many of the drugs, the pharmaceuticals that we put in the bodies of our children are manufactured by nations that hate us. This has to stop. And we're not going to stop it by listening to experts. We're going to stop it by listening to common sense wisdom, which is what Donald Trump governed on.
Senator, your
Look,
time is up. Governor Walz, can you address that? I mean, voters say they trust Donald Trump on the economy more. Why?
Well, if you're listening tonight and you want billionaires to get tax cuts, you heard what the numbers were. Look, I'm a union guy on this. I'm not a guy who wanted to ship things overseas, but I understand that, look, we produce soybeans and corn. We need to have fair trading partners. That's something that we believe in. I think the thing that most concerns me on this is Donald Trump was the guy who created the largest trade deficit in American history with China. So the rhetoric is good. Much of what the senator said right there, I'm in agreement with him on this. I watched it happen too. I watched it to my communities, and we talked about that. But we had people undercutting the right to collectively bargain. We had right to work states made it more difficult. We had companies that were willing to ship it over, and we saw people profit. Folks that are venture capital in some cases, putting money into companies that were overseas. We're in agreement that we bring those home. The issue is Donald Trump is talking about it. Kamala Harris has a record, 250,000 more manufacturing jobs just out of the IRA.
May I respond to that?
Yes.
So appreciate that. So if you notice what Governor Walz just did is he said, first of all, Donald Trump has to listen to the experts. And then when he acknowledged that the experts screwed up, he said, well, Donald Trump didn't do nearly as good of a job as the statistics
No, that's a
show
gross
that
generalization.
he did. So what Tim Walz is doing, and I honestly, Tim, I think you got a tough job here because you've got to play whack-a-mole. You've got to pretend that Donald Trump didn't deliver rising take-home pay, which of course he did. You've got to pretend that Donald Trump didn't deliver lower inflation, which of course he did. And then you simultaneously got to defend Kamala Harris's atrocious economic record, which has made gas, groceries, and housing unaffordable for American citizens. I was raised by a woman who would sometimes go into medical debt so that she could put food on the table in our household. I know what it's like to not be able to afford the things that you need to afford. We can do so much better. To all of you watching, we can get back to an America that's affordable again. We just got to get back to common sense economic principles.
I hope we have a conversation on healthcare then.
Senator, Governor,
Please.
thank you. Margaret?
We have a lot to get to ahead, gentlemen, on many topics. But right now, I want to talk about personal qualifications. The vice president is often the last voice the president hears before making consequential decisions. We want to ask you about your leadership qualities. Governor Walz, you said you were in Hong Kong during the deadly Tiananmen Square protests in the spring of 1989. But Minnesota Public Radio and other media outlets are reporting that you actually didn't travel to Asia until August of that year. Can you explain that discrepancy? You have 2
Yeah,
minutes.
well, and to the folks out there who didn't get at the top of this, look, I grew up in small rural Nebraska, town of 400, town that you rode your bike with your buddies till the streetlights come on, and I'm proud of that service. I joined the National Guard at 17, worked on family farms, and then I used the GI Bill to become a teacher, passionate about it, a young teacher. My first year out, I got the opportunity in the summer of '89 to travel to China. 35 years ago, be able to do that. I came back home and then started a program to take young people there. We would take basketball teams, we would take baseball teams, we would take dancers, and we would go back and forth to China. The issue for that was to try and learn. Now, look, my community knows who I am. They saw where I was at. Look, I will be the first to tell you, I have poured my heart into my community. I've tried to do the best I can, but I've not been perfect. And I'm a knucklehead at times, but it's always been about that. Those same people elected me to Congress for 12 years. And in Congress, I was one of the most bipartisan people, working on things like farm bills that we got done, working on veterans benefits. And then the people of Minnesota were able to elect me to governor twice. So look, my commitment has been from the beginning to make sure that I'm there for the people, to make sure that I get this right. I will say more than anything, many times I will talk a lot. I will get caught up in the rhetoric. But being there, the impact it made, the difference it made in my life, I learned a lot about China. I hear the critiques of this. I would make the case that Donald Trump should have come on one of those trips with us. I guarantee you he wouldn't be praising Xi Jinping about COVID. And I guarantee you he wouldn't start a trade war that he ends up losing. So this is about trying to understand the world. It's about trying to do the best you can for your community. And then it's putting yourself out there and letting your folks understand what it is. My commitment, whether it be through teaching, which I was good at, or whether it was being a good soldier or was being a good member of Congress, those are the things that I think are the values that people care about.
Governor, just to follow up on that, the question was, can you explain the
No, just-
discrepancy?
All I said on this was I got there that summer and misspoke on this. So I will just, that's what I've said. So I was in Hong Kong and China during the democracy protests went in. And from that, I learned a lot of what needed to be in governance.
Thank you, Governor. Senator Vance, in 2016, you called your running mate, Donald Trump, unfit for the nation's highest office, and you said he could be America's Hitler. I know you've been asked many times, and you've said you regret those comments and explained you then voted for Donald Trump in 2020. But the Washington Post reported new messages last week in which you also disparaged Trump's economic record while he was president, writing to someone in 2020, quote, Trump thoroughly failed to deliver his economic populism. You're now his running mate, and you've shifted many of your policy stances to align with his. If you become vice president, why should Americans trust that you will give Donald Trump the advice he needs to hear and not just the advice he wants to hear? You have 2 minutes.
Well, first of all, Margaret, because I've always been open. And sometimes, of course, I've disagreed with the president, but I've also been extremely open about the fact that I was wrong about Donald Trump. I was wrong, first of all, because I believed some of the media stories that turned out to be dishonest fabrications of his record. But most importantly, Donald Trump delivered for the American people. Rising wages, rising take-home pay, an economy that worked for normal Americans, a secure southern border, a lot of things, frankly, that I didn't think he'd be able to deliver on. And yeah, when you screw up, when you misspeak, when you get something wrong and you change your mind, you ought to be honest with the American people about it. It's one of the reasons, Margaret, why I've done so many interviews is because I think it's important to actually explain to the American people where I come down on the issues and what changed. Now, you pointed out the messages from 2020. Margaret, I've been extremely consistent that I think there were a lot of things that we could have done better in the Trump administration, the first round, if Congress was doing its job. I strongly believe, and I've been a United States Senator, that Congress is not just a high-class debating society. It's not just a forum for senators and congressmen to whine about problems. It's a forum to govern. So there were a lot of things on the border, on tariffs, for example, where I think that we could have done so much more if the Republican Congress and the Democrats in Congress had been a little bit better about how they govern the country. They were so obsessed with impeaching Donald Trump, they couldn't actually govern. And I want to talk about this tariff issue in particular, Margaret, because Tim just accused this of being a national sales tax. Look, the one thing, and you're probably surprised to hear me praising Joe Biden, but the one thing that Joe Biden did is he continued some of the Trump tariffs that protected American manufacturing jobs. And it's the one issue, the most pro-worker part of the Biden administration, it's the one issue where Kamala Harris has run away from Joe Biden's record. Think about this. If you're trying to employ slave laborers in China at $3 a day, you're going to do that and undercut the wages of American workers unless our country stands up for itself and says, you're not accessing our markets unless you're paying middle-class Americans a fair wage.
Senator, your time is up. Nora?
Thank you. Now to the issue of reproductive rights. Governor Walz, after Roe versus Wade was overturned, you signed a bill into law that made Minnesota one of the least restrictive states in the nation when it comes to abortion. Former President Trump said in the last debate that you believe abortion, quote, in the 9th month is absolutely fine. Yes or no? Is that what you support? I'll give you 2 minutes.
That's not what the bill says, but look, this issue is what's on everyone's mind. Donald Trump put this all into motion. He brags about how great it was that he put the judges in and overturned Roe versus Wade, 52 years of personal autonomy. And then he tells us, oh, we send it to the states. It's a beautiful thing. Amanda Zaworski would disagree with you on it's a beautiful thing. A young bride in Texas waiting for their child at 18 weeks. She has a complication, a tear in the membrane. She needs to go in. The medical care at that point needs to be decided by the doctor. And that would have been an abortion. But in Texas, that would have put them in legal jeopardy. She went home, got sepsis, nearly dies, and now she may have difficulty having children. Or in Kentucky, Hadley Duval, a 12-year-old child raped and impregnated by her stepfather. Those are horrific. Now, when God asked about that, Senator Vance said 2 wrongs don't make a right. There is no right in this. So in Minnesota, what we did was restore Roe versus Wade. We made sure that we put women in charge of their health care. But look, This is not what, if you don't know Amanda or a Hadley, you soon will. Their Project 2025 is going to have a registry of pregnancies. It's going to make it more difficult, if not impossible, to get contraception and limit access, if not eliminate access to infertility treatments. For so many of you out there listening, me included, infertility treatments are why I have a child. That's nobody else's business, but those things are being proposed. And the catch-all on this is, well, the states will decide what's right for Texas might not be right for Washington. That's not how this works. This is basic human right. We have seen maternal mortality skyrocket in Texas, outpacing many other countries in the world. This is about healthcare. In Minnesota, we are ranked first in healthcare for a reason. We trust women, we trust doctors.
Senator, do you want to respond to the governor's claim? Will you create a federal pregnancy monitoring agency?
No, Nora, certainly we won't. And I want to talk about this issue because I know a lot of Americans care about it, and I know a lot of Americans don't agree with everything that I've ever said on this topic. And, you know, I grew up in a working class family in a neighborhood where I knew a lot of young women who had unplanned pregnancies and decided to terminate those pregnancies because they feel like they didn't have any other options. And, you know, one of them is actually very dear to me. And I know she's watching tonight, and I love you. And she told me something a couple years ago that she felt like if she hadn't had that abortion, that it would have destroyed her life because she was in an abusive relationship. And I think that what I take from that as a Republican who proudly wants to protect innocent life in this country, who proudly wants to protect the vulnerable, is that my party, we've got to do so much better of a job at earning the American people's trust back on this issue where they frankly just don't trust us. And I think that's one of the things that Donald Trump and I are endeavoring to do. I want us as a Republican Party to be pro-family in the fullest sense of the word. I want us to support fertility treatments. I want us to make it easier for moms to afford to have babies. I want it to make it easier for young families to afford a home so they can afford a place to raise that family. And I think there's so much that we can do on the public policy front just to give women more options. Now, of course, Donald Trump has been very clear that on the abortion policy specifically, that we have a big country and it's diverse. And California has a different viewpoint on this than Georgia. Georgia has a different viewpoint from Arizona. And the proper way to handle this, as messy as democracy sometimes is to let voters make these decisions, let the individual states make their abortion policy. And I think that's what makes the most sense in a very big, a very diverse, and let's be honest, sometimes a very, very messy and divided country.
Governor, would you like to respond and also answer the question about restrictions?
Yeah, well, the question got asked and Donald Trump made the accusation that wasn't true about Minnesota. Well, let me tell you about this idea that there's diverse states. There's a young woman named Amber Thurman. She happened to be in Georgia, a restrictive state. Because of that, she had to travel a long distance to North Carolina to try and get her care. Amber Thurman died in that journey back and forth. The fact of the matter is, how can we as a nation say that your life and your rights, as basic as the right to control your own body, is determined on geography? There's a very real chance had Amber Thurman lived in Minnesota, she would be alive today. That's why the restoration of Roe versus Wade. When you listen to Vice President Harris talk about this subject and you hear me talk about it, you hear us talking exactly the same. Donald Trump is trying to figure out how to get the political right of this. I agree with a lot of what Senator Vance said about what's happening. His running mate, though, does not, and that's the problem.
Governor, your time is up. Senator, let me ask you about that. He mentioned, it was, I think, referring to a national ban. In the past, you have supported a federal ban on abortion after 15 weeks. In fact, you said if someone can't support legislation like that, quote, you are making the United States the most barbaric pro-abortion regime anywhere in the entire world. My question is, why have you changed your position?
Well, Nora, first of all, I never supported a national ban. I did when I was running for Senate in 2022, talk about setting some minimum national standard. For example, we have a partial birth abortion ban in place in this country at the federal level. I don't think anybody's trying to get rid of that, or at least I hope not, though I know that Democrats have taken a very radical pro-abortion stance. But Nora, you know, one of the things that changed is in the state of Ohio, we had a referendum in 2023, and the people of Ohio voted overwhelmingly, by the way, against my position. And I think that what I learned from that, Nora, is that we've got to do a better job at winning back people's trust. So many young women would love to have families. So many young women also see an unplanned pregnancy as something that's going to destroy their livelihood, destroy their education, destroy their relationships. And we have got to earn people's trust back. And that's why Donald Trump and I are committed to pursuing pro-family policies, making childcare more accessible, making fertility treatments more accessible, because we've got to do a better job at that. And that's what real leadership is.
Governor, your response.
I'm going to respond on the pro-abortion piece of that. No, we're not. We're pro-women. We're pro-freedom to make your own choice. We know what the implications are to not be that. Women having miscarriages, women not getting the care, physicians feeling like they may be prosecuted for providing that care. And as far as making sure that we're educating our children and giving them options, Minnesota's a state with one of the lowest teen pregnancy rates. We understand that too. We know that the options need to be available, and we make that true. We also make it, we're a top 3 state for the best place to raise children. But these two things, to try and say that we're pro-children, but we don't like this, or you guys are pro-abortion, that's not the case at all. We are pro-freedoms for women to make their choices, and we're going, and Kamala Harris is making the case, to make options for children more affordable, a $6,000 child tax credit, but we're not going to base that on the backs of making someone like Amber Thurman drive 600 miles to try and get health care.
Senator?
May I respond to that? First of all, Governor, I agree with you. Amber Thurman should still be alive, and there are a lot of people who should still be alive, and I certainly wish that she was. And maybe you're free to disagree with me on this and explain this to me, but as I read the Minnesota law that you signed into law, the statute that you signed into law, it says that a doctor who presides over an abortion where the baby survives, the doctor is under no obligation to provide life-saving care to a baby who survives a botched late-term abortion. That is, I think, whether you're pro-choice or pro-abortion, that is fundamentally barbaric. And that's why I use that word, Nora, is because some of what we've seen, do you want to force Catholic hospitals to perform abortions against their will? Because Kamala Harris has supported suing Catholic nuns to violate their freedom of conscience. We can be a big and diverse country where we respect people's freedom of conscience and make the country more pro-baby and pro-family. But please.
Yes, Governor, please respond.
Look, this is one where there's always something there. This is a very simple proposition. These are women's decisions to make about their healthcare decisions, and the physicians who know best when they need to do this. Trying to distort the way a law is written to try and make a point, that's not it at all.
What was I wrong about, Governor? Please tell me, what was I wrong about?
That is not the way the law is written. Look, I've given
But how?
I've given this advice on a lot of things, that getting involved, that's been misread, and it was fact-checked at the last debate. But the point on this is there's a continuation of these guys to try and tell women or to get involved. I use this line on this, just mind your own business on this. Things worked best when Roe versus Wade was in place. When we do a restoration of Roe, that works best. That doesn't preclude us from increasing funding for children. It doesn't increase us from making sure that once that child's born, like in Minnesota, they get meals, they get early childhood education, they get health care. So the hiding behind we're going to do all these other things when you're not proposing them in your budget, Kamala Harris is proposing them. She's proposing all those things to make life easier for families.
I asked a specific question, Governor. You gave me a slogan as a response.
It's not the case. It's not true. That's not what the law says. So they fact-checked it with President Trump.
Gentlemen, there's a lot to discuss. We have to move on, and we're going to be right back with much more of the CBS News vice presidential debate in just a moment.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, what are we? Wait, Jonah, bro, I need you to help me out right now, bro. Are you trolling me right now, bro? Do you really
what
think
they're doing?
that? Yeah. Do you really
I think it's
that
pretty
Waltz-
even, to be honest. I think Waltz won on certain things. Like, I can't get over the fact that we've been trying to pass a Republican immigration bill, and Trump said, "Don't fucking vote for it, Republicans." This was like proposed by Republicans when Trump was like still president, but was transitioning to Joe Biden. And we haven't been able to fucking pass it because Trump's like, "Nah, I want it so I can win." It's so trash. That's such.
I feel like you're just taking their translation of it.
What, right? I mean, like, obviously, I feel more with Waltz on abortion because I'm pro-choice, right? So,
But he
like,
lied.
it just depends how you feel on it.
But he lied. He definitely lied
Where?
about the law that we discussed this at length, right? We read the documentation about the fact that it is legal for a doctor who attempted to perform an abortion. The baby survived. The baby is alive. The doctor has the right currently to refuse life-saving treatment to the living baby on the table. They are trying to pass laws.
In every
That is
single one.
100% true.
So there was like 254 babies when we saw that. There were 254 babies where that happened. Out of how many abortions? It's like a
so
non-issue.
250 something babies. Those people don't matter because it didn't happen to a lot of people. That's the naive
Tejano,
argument.
you and me
No, no, no.
disagree on what is a baby or
It's
not.
irrelevant. Bro, if the child is alive and crying on the table, that's a baby, bro. What kind of Neanderthal?
You and I
horrible
can get
human being
into an
you're trying to-
abortion.
trying
You
to-
and I can
trying
get
to-
into an abortion debate. Let's stick to how they did. Like, I want to do a whole debate analysis real quick. I think JD Vance is doing a really good job of being relatable. I think he's talking better. I just disagree with him on a lot of these fucking issues, right? Where I agree with him on the issues, I think is true, right? I think Trump is better at foreign policy, and I think he's better at immigration. I think he's terrible for abortions, and I think it's that. So it's kind of like, in my opinion, it's kind of even, right? It just depends on how you feel about these issues, right?
Guys, in the chat, tell us how you think. I would love to hear your guys' thoughts. Who's taking this? Is it even? I'm gonna be honest, and I'm gonna catch myself in it this time because I didn't catch it last time until I rewatched. I know I'm not paying 100% attention because I'm like reading the chat, I'm chatting, I'm commenting, so I know I'm not paying a lot of attention. What I will say is this: Vance is way smoother of a communicator than I realized. This guy is clean.
He's a really good communicator. Walz is okay.
Without question.
He's like,
I think
okay.
Of the four people that we have, like VPs and presidents, Vance is without question the best communicator of the four, including Harris and Trump. I feel like there's a lot of dodging on both parts. I feel like Walz is being more dishonest. I didn't love that he started with the attacks. I love that Vance went classy. Yeah. I don't like, but that's politics. I think Vance has gone the classier road. I think he's the better communicator. I think they have both been guilty of dodging questions. I have not caught Vance in a lie yet. I'm not going to say he hasn't. I have definitely heard Walz lie a couple of times. So that's kind of my stance.
For lies? Wait, what did he lie? What did he lie about? So you think he lied about the killing babies? What else do you think he lied about?
He definitely lied about the abortion thing.
Well, what else? Yeah,
he lied about the what the heck was it? I typed in the chat. I don't remember what it was. I don't want to say the wrong thing. I typed in the chat when he didn't lie about it. It was one of the things that they talked about. Exactly, Jeremy. This is exactly what we discussed last week. I have a video coming out about it. We literally discussed this last week. Throw your thoughts in the chat. So you're thinking it's even?
I think it's pretty even overall.
Right. I think that's pretty fair. I would lean Vance on this one.
But I would lean because of his communication style. He just sounds better. So I'd lean a little bit more just because of that to Vance. I think most people wear Vance
for children and teens in America is by firearms. Senator Vance, you oppose most gun legislation that Democrats claim would curb gun violence. You oppose red flag gun laws and legislation to ban certain semi-automatic rifles, including AR-15s. So let me ask you, earlier this year, for the first time, the parents of a school shooter were convicted of involuntary manslaughter and sentenced to 10 years in prison. Do you think holding parents responsible could curb mass shootings? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Yeah, well, Nora, on that particular case, I don't know the full details, but I certainly trust local law enforcement and local authorities to make those decisions. I think in some cases the answer is going to be yes, and in some cases the answer is going to be no. And the details really matter here, of course. For example, if a kid steals a gun, that's going to be different than if a parent hands over a gun knowing that their kid is potentially dangerous. But look, I want to just sort of speak as a father of 3 beautiful little kids, and our oldest is now in 2nd grade. And like a lot of parents, we send our kids to school with such hope and such joy and such pride at their little faces on the first day of school. And we know, unfortunately, that a lot of kids are going to experience this terrible epidemic of gun violence. And of course, our hearts go out to the families that are affected by this terrible stuff. And we do have to do better. And I think that Governor Walz and I actually probably agree that we need to do better on this. The question is just, how do we actually do it? Now, here's something that really bothers me and worries me about this epidemic of violence. The gross majority, close to 90% in some of the statistics I've seen, of the gun violence in this country is committed with illegally obtained firearms. And while we're on that topic, we know that thanks to Kamala Harris's open border, we've seen a massive influx in the number of illegal guns run by the Mexican drug cartel. So that number, the amount of illegal guns in our country is higher today than it was 3.5 years ago. But what do we do about the schools? What do we do to protect our kids? And I think the answer is, and I say this not loving the answer, because I don't want my kids to go to school in a school that feels unsafe or where there are visible signs of security. But I unfortunately think that we have to increase security in our schools. We have to make the doors lock better. We have to make the doors stronger. We've got to make the windows stronger. And of course, we've got to increase school resource officers, because the idea that we can magically wave a wand and take guns out of the hands of bad guys, it just doesn't fit with recent experience. So we've got to make our schools safer. And I think we've got to have some common sense bipartisan solutions for how to do that.
Governor, you have 2 minutes.
Well, I think all the parents watching tonight, this is your biggest nightmare. Look, I got a 17-year-old, and he witnessed a shooting at a community center playing volleyball. Those things don't leave you. As a member of Congress, I sat in my office surrounded by dozens of the Sandy Hook parents, and they were looking at my 7-year-old picture on the wall. Their 7-year-old were dead, and they were asking us to do something. And look, I'm a hunter. I own firearms. The vice president is. We understand that the Second Amendment is there, but our first responsibility is to our kids to figure this out. In Minnesota, we've enacted enhanced red flag laws, enhanced background checks, and we can start to get data. But here's the problem. If we really want to solve this, we've got folks that won't allow research to be even done on gun violence. And this idea that we should just live with it, and here's what I do think, that this is a good start to the conversation. I 100% believe that Senator Vance hates it when these kids, it's abhorrent and it breaks your heart. I agree with that. But that's not far enough when we know there are things that work. I've spent time in Finland and seen some Finnish schools. They don't have this happen, even though they have a high gun ownership rate in the country. There are reasonable things that we can do to make a difference. It's not infringing on your Second Amendment. And the idea to have some of these weapons out there, it just doesn't make any sense. Kamala Harris, as an attorney general, worked on this issue. She knows that it's there. No one's trying to scaremonger and say we're taking your guns, but I ask all of you out there, do you want your schools hardened to look like a fort? Is that what we have to go? When we know there's countries around the world that their children aren't practicing these types of drills. They're being kids. We owe it to them to get a fix. These are things that shouldn't be that difficult. You can still keep your firearms and we can make a difference. We have to. If you're listening tonight, this breaks your heart.
Senator.
Tim, first of all, I didn't know that your 17-year-old witnessed a shooting. I'm sorry about that, and I hope that he's doing okay. Christ have mercy. It is awful. And I appreciate what Tim said actually about Finland, because I do think it illustrates some of the frankly weird differences between our own country's gun violence problem and Finland. Is okay, first of all, we have way higher rates of mental health abuse or mental health substance abuse. We have way higher rates of depression, way higher rates of anxiety. We unfortunately have a mental health crisis in this country that I really do think that we need to get to the root causes of, because I don't think it's the whole reason why we have such a bad gun violence problem, but I do think it's a big piece of it. Another driver of the gun violence epidemic, especially that affecting our kids, it doesn't earn as many headlines, but is the terrible gun violence problem in a lot of our big cities. And this is why we have to empower law enforcement to arrest the bad guys, put them away, and take gun offenders off the streets. I think there's a whole host of things that we can do here, but I do think at our schools, we've got to talk about more security.
Senator, thank you. Governor, you previously opposed an assault weapons ban, but only later in your political career did you change your position. Why?
Yeah, I sat in that office with those Sandy Hook parents. I've become friends with school shooters. I've seen it. Look, the NRA, I was an NRA guy for a long time. They used to teach gun safety. I'm of an age where my shotgun was in my car so I could pheasant hunt after football practice. That's not where we live today. And several things I want to mention on this is talking about cities and where it's at. The number one where the most firearm deaths happen in Minnesota are rural suicides. And we have an epidemic of children getting guns and shooting themselves. And so we have, and we should look at all of the issues. making sure folks have health care and all that, but I want to be very careful. This idea of stigmatizing mental health, just because you have a mental health issue doesn't mean you're violent. And I think what we end up doing is we start looking for a scapegoat. Sometimes it just is the guns. It's just the guns. And there are things that you can do about it. But I do think that this is one, and I think this is a healthy conversation. I think there's a capacity to find solutions on this that work, protect Second Amendment, protect our children. That's our priority.
Gentlemen, thank you. Margaret?
Thank you, Nora. Let's turn now to the top contributor to inflation, the high cost of housing and rent. There's a shortage of more than 4 million homes in the United States, and that contributes to the high housing prices. Governor Walz, the Harris campaign promises a $25,000 down payment assistance for first-time home buyers and a $10,000 tax credit. They also promise to build 3 million new homes. Where are you building these homes, and won't handing out that kind of money just drive up prices higher?
No, it's not handing out. We have, first, let me say this issue of housing, and I think those of you listening on this, the problem we've had is that we've got a lot of folks that see housing as another commodity. It can be bought up, it can be shifted, it can be moved around. Those are not folks living in those houses. Those of you listening tonight, that house is a big deal. I bought and owned one house in my life. My mom still lives in the house where I was. And when I think of a house, I'm thinking of Christmas services after midnight mass where you go with your family. We need to make it more affordable. And one of the things, as I said, this program that the vice president is pushing forward and bringing a new way of approaching this is something we're doing in Minnesota from that lead. We in the state invested in making sure our housing was the biggest investment that we'd ever made in housing. It starts to make it easier. We cut some of the red tape. Local folks, look, we can't do it at the federal level, but local folks make it easier to build those homes. And then that down payment assistance. I can tell all of you out there, certainly for me, using the GI Bill was one thing, but a veteran's home loan, the big thing about a veteran's home loan is you don't have to pay the down payment. Those are things that make it there. Now, look, you're going to pay it back and you're going to pay your mortgage. Those are things that we know in the long run, the appreciated value, the generational wealth that's created from it. And I will give Minneapolis an example. Minneapolis is the one city where we've seen the lowest inflation rates. We've seen a 12% increase in stock because we put some of these things in, and we're implementing a state program to make sure we give some of that down payment assistance. We get it back from people because here's what we know. People with stable housing end up with stable jobs. People with stable housing have their kids able to get to school. All of those things in the long run end up saving our money. And that's the thing that I think we should be able to find some common ground in, but we can't blame immigrants for the only reason. That's not the case that's happening in many cities. The fact of the matter is that we don't have enough naturally affordable housing, but we can make sure that the government's there to help kickstart it, create that base.
Governor, your time is up. Senator Vance, as far as your campaign's position, the promise is to seize federal lands to build homes, remove regulation, provide tax breaks, and cut back on immigration, which you say pushes up prices. Where are you going to build all the new homes you're promising? And what part of any of this plan will provide immediate relief? You have 2 minutes.
Well, first of all, Tim just said something that I agree with. We don't want to blame immigrants for higher housing prices, but we do want to blame Kamala Harris for letting in millions of illegal aliens into this country, which does drive up costs, Tim. 25 million illegal aliens competing with Americans for scarce homes is one of the most significant drivers of home prices in the country. It's why we have massive increases in home prices that have happened right alongside massive increases in illegal alien populations under Kamala Harris's leadership. Now, Tim just mentioned a bunch of ideas. Now, some of those ideas I actually think are halfway decent, and some of them I disagree with. But the most important thing here is Kamala Harris is not running as a newcomer to politics. She is the sitting vice president. If she wants to enact all of these policies to make housing more affordable, I invite her to use the office that the American people already gave her, not sit around and campaign and do nothing while Americans find the American dream of homeownership completely unaffordable. Now, you asked, Margaret, what would immediately change the equation for American citizens. If you lower energy prices, as Donald Trump says, drill, baby, drill, one of the biggest drivers of housing costs aside from illegal immigration is, think about it. If a truck driver is paying 40% more for diesel, then the lumber he's delivering to the job site to build the house is also going to become a lot more expensive. If we open up American energy, you will get immediate pricing relief for American citizens, not, by the way, just in housing, but in a whole host of other economic goods too.
Senator Vance, you still have 23 seconds there. Do you want to answer?
Can I have it?
Where, yeah. Governor, we will get to you in a moment, but Senator, where are you going to seize the federal lands? Can you clarify?
Well, what Donald Trump has said is we have a lot of federal lands that aren't being used for anything. They're not being used for national park. They're not being used, and they could be places where we build a lot of housing. And I do think that we should be opening up building in this country. We have a lot of land that could be used. We have a lot of Americans that need homes. We should be kicking out illegal immigrants who are competing for those homes, and we should be building more homes for the American citizens who deserve to be here.
Senator, your time is up. Governor, I do want to let you respond to the allegation that the vice president is letting in.
Well, of course, that's not
migrants,
true. And again,
that
you
it's
have the
affecting
facts. I
housing
guess we
prices.
agreed not to fact check. I'll check it. That, look, crossings are down compared to when Donald Trump left office. But it's, again, blaming and not trying to find the solution. I was going to ask, though, on this question, are we going to drill and build houses in the same federal land? And I think when people hear federal lands, these are really important pieces of land. Now, Minnesota doesn't have a lot of federal lands. I know in the western part of the countries we do. There's not a lot of federal lands in and around Minneapolis, for example. So the issue is I don't understand the federal lands issue unless we see this, and I worry about this as someone who cares deeply about our national parks and our federal lands. Look, Minnesota, we protect these things. We've got about 20% of the world's fresh water. These lands protect. They're there for a reason. They belong to all of us. But again, this is when you view housing and you view these things as commodities. Like, there's a chance to make money here. Let's take this federal land and let's sell it to people for that. I think there's better ways to do this. We've seen it in Minnesota. We're able to refurbish some of these houses. We're able to make some investments. That gets people in. And I'm still on the fact on this. Economists, Senator Vance, you said you don't like the economists. Which economists are saying that it is immigrants that's adding to the cost?
Governor,
Where's the
your
study?
time is up. But Senator, on that point, I'd like for you to clarify. There are many contributing factors to high housing costs. What evidence do you have that migrants are part of this problem?
Well, there's a Federal Reserve study that we're happy to share after the debate. We'll put it up on social media, actually, that really drills down on the connection between increased levels of migration, especially illegal immigration, and higher housing prices. Now, of course, Margaret, that's not the entire driver of higher housing prices. It's also the regulatory regime of Kamala Harris. Look, we are a country of builders. We're a country of doers. We're a country of explorers. But we increasingly have a federal administration that makes it harder to develop our resources, makes it harder to build things, and wants to throw people in jail for not doing everything exactly as Kamala Harris says they have to do. And what that means is that you have a lot of people who would love to build homes who aren't able to build homes. I actually agree with Tim Walz. We should get out of this idea of housing as a commodity. But the thing that has most turned housing into a commodity is giving it away to millions upon millions of people who have no legal right to be here.
What are the federal regulations? I deal with this as a governor.
You can very quickly reply.
I'm sorry. I get this as a governor, and I don't necessarily disagree with that in some cases, many of those are local. Many of them are state. I don't know which ones are federal, but I think whenever we talk regulations, people think they can get rid of them. I think you want to be able to get out of your house in a fire. I think you want to make sure that it's fireproof and those types of things. So which are the regulations? Because the vice president's not responsible for those. Congress writes those.
Governor, thank you. Gentlemen, we have a lot to get to. You're passionate about the housing crisis, I can tell. But Nora?
Thank you. One of the top problems facing Americans is the high cost of health care. Senator Vance, at the last presidential debate, former President Trump was asked about replacing the Affordable Care Act. In response, he said, "I have concepts of a plan." Since then, Senator, you've talked about changing how chronically ill Americans get health insurance. Can you explain how that would work? And can you guarantee that Americans with pre-existing conditions won't pay more? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Well, of course, we're going to cover Americans with pre-existing conditions. In fact, a lot of my family members have gotten health care I believe, members of my family actually got private health insurance, at least for the first time, switched off of Medicaid onto private insurance for the first time under Donald Trump's leadership. And I think that, a lot of people have criticized this concepts of a plan remark. It's very simple common sense. I think as Tim Walz knows from 12 years in Congress, you're not going to propose a 900-page bill standing on a debate stage. It would bore everybody to tears, and it wouldn't actually mean anything because part of this is the give and take of bipartisan negotiation. Now, when Donald Trump was actually president, and again, he has a record to be proud of, prescription drugs fell in 2018 for the first time in a very long time. Under Kamala Harris's leadership, prescription drugs are up about 7%. Under Donald Trump's entire 4 years, they were up about 1.5%. He introduced pricing transparency. Think about healthcare. You go into a hospital, you try to buy something, and nobody knows what it actually costs. That price transparency will actually give American consumers a little bit more choice and will also drive down costs. And we talked about, the reinsurance regulations is what I was talking about. Look, Donald Trump has said that if we allow states to experiment a little bit on how to cover both the chronically ill, but the non-chronically ill, it's not just a plan. He actually implemented some of these regulations when he was president of the United States. And I think you can make a really good argument that it salvaged Obamacare, which was doing disastrously until Donald Trump came along. And I think it's an important point about President Trump. Of course, you don't have to agree with everything that President Trump has ever said or ever done. But when Obamacare was crushing under the weight of its own regulatory burden and healthcare costs, Donald Trump could have destroyed the program. Instead, he worked in a bipartisan way to ensure that Americans had access to affordable care. It's not perfect, of course, and there's so much more that we can do, but I think that Donald Trump has earned the right to put in place some better healthcare policies. He's earned it because he did it successfully the first time.
Governor?
All right, here's where being an old guy gives you some history. I was there at the creation of the ACA. And the reason it was so important is I come from a major healthcare state, home of the Mayo Clinic, home to Medical Alley, 3M, Medtronic, all of those. We understand healthcare. It's why we're ranked first on affordability and accessibility and quality of healthcare. And so what I know is under Kamala Harris, more people are covered than they have before. And those of you listening, this is critical to you. Now, Donald Trump all of a sudden wants to go back and remember this. He ran on the first thing he was going to do on day one was to repeal Obamacare. On day one, he tried to sign an executive order to repeal the ACA. He signed on to a lawsuit to repeal the ACA, but lost at the Supreme Court. And he would have repealed the ACA had it not been for the courage of John McCain to save that bill. Now, fast forward, what that means to you is you lose your pre-existing conditions. If you're sitting at home and you got asthma, too bad. If you're a woman, probably not. Broke your foot during football, might kick you out. Your kids get kicked out when they're 26. Kamala Harris negotiated drug prices for the first time with Medicare. We have 10 drugs that will come online, the most common ones that'll be there. But look, this issue, and when Donald Trump said, I've got a concept of a plan, it cracked me up as a fourth grade teacher because my kids would have never given me that. But what Senator Vance just explained might be worse than a concept, because what he explained is pre-Obamacare. And I'll make this as simple as possible because I have done this for a long time. What they're saying is, if you're healthy, why should you be paying more? So what they're going to do is let insurance companies pick who they insure, because guess what happens? You pay your premium, it's not much. They figure they're not going to have to pay out to you. But those of you a little older, gray, got cancer, you're going to get kicked out of it. That's why the system didn't work. Kamala Harris will protect and enhance the ACA.
Governor, thank you. Senator, you have not yet explained how you would protect people with pre-existing conditions or laid out that plan.
Well, look, we currently have laws and regulations in place right now that protect people with pre-existing conditions. We want to keep those regulations in place, but we also want to make the health insurance marketplace function a little bit better. Now, what Governor Walz just said is actually not true. A lot of what happened, and the reason that Obamacare was crushing under its own weight, is that a lot of young and healthy people were leaving the exchanges. Donald Trump actually helped address that problem, and he did so in a way that preserved people's access to coverage who had pre-existing conditions. But again, something that these guys do is they make a lot of claims about if Donald Trump becomes president, all of these terrible consequences are going to ensue. But in reality, Donald Trump was president. Inflation was low. Take-home pay was higher, and he saved the very program from a Democratic administration that was collapsing and would have collapsed absent his leadership. He did his job, which is govern in a bipartisan way and get results, not just complain about problems, but actually solve them.
Governor, did enrollment under the Affordable Care Act go up under the Trump administration?
It's higher now that we've seen it go up. Look, people are using it. The system works. And the question about this of young people or whatever, that's the individual mandate piece of this. And Republicans fought tooth and nail saying, well, Americans should be free to do this. Well, then
So
what
you
happens
think the
is
individual mandate's a good idea?
you shrink. I think the idea of making sure the risk pool is broad enough to cover everyone, that's the only way insurance works. When it doesn't, it collapses. You are asking pre-ACA where we get people out. Look, people know that they need to be on health care. People expect it to be there. And when we are able to make it, and we are making it this way, when we incentivize people to be in the market, when we help people who might not be able to afford it get there, and we make sure then when you get sick and old, it's there for you. Because I heard people say, well, I don't want to buy into Medicare or whatever. Good luck buying healthcare once you get past 70. So look, the ACA works. We can continue to do better. Kamala Harris did that. The way she made everything better was negotiating those 10 drugs on Medicare for the first time in American history.
Thank you, Margaret.
Can I address that?
I apologize. We're out of
Go
time.
ahead,
We have a
Nora.
number of subjects to discuss. Margaret.
Let's talk about families in America. There is a child care crisis
Sure.
in this country, and the United States is one of the very few developed countries in the world without a national paid leave program for new parents. Governor Walz, you've said that if Democrats win both the White House and Congress, this is a day one priority for you. How long should employers be required to pay workers while they are home taking care of their newborns? You have 2 minutes.
Yeah, well, that's negotiable, and that's what Congress worked. But here's what the deal is. Americans sitting out there right now, you may work for a big company. Look, we're home in Minnesota to some of the largest Fortune 500 companies. Kamala Harris knows that in California. Those companies provide paid family and medical leave. One is, I think they're moral and they think it's a good thing, but it also keeps their employees healthy. We in Minnesota passed a paid family and medical leave. You have a child, and I had to go back to work 5 days after my kids were born. This allows you to stay home a certain amount of time. What we know is that gets the child off to a better start. The family works better. We stay in their employers. We get more consistency in that. So Kamala Harris has made it a priority. We implemented it in Minnesota and we see growth. That's how you become a pro-business state. But the negotiations on it, and here's the issue. Those big companies are able to offer it. Those of you out there who don't have it, just imagine what happens if you get cancer or your child gets sick. We know what happens. You end up staying home. In some cases, that means no paycheck because you've got no protection on that. This is the case of an economy that Donald Trump has set for the wealthiest amongst us. He's willing to give those tax breaks to the wealthiest. He's willing to say, bust those unions up, do whatever. What we're saying is the economy works best when it works for all of us. And so a paid family medical leave program, and I will tell you, go to the families or go to the businesses and ask them. As far as childcare on this, you have to take it at both the supply and the demand side. You can't expect the most important people in our lives to take either our children or our parents to get paid the least amount of money. And we have to make it easier for folks to be able to get into that business and then to make sure that folks are able to pay for that. We were able to do it in Minnesota, and I'm still telling you this. We were listed as the best state. We're still in crisis on this. A federal program of paid family and medical leave and help with this will enhance our workforce, enhance our families, and make it easier to have the children that you want.
Governor, your time is up. Senator, do you support a national paid leave program? And if so, for how long should employers be mandated to pay their employees while they are home taking care of their newborn? You have 2 minutes.
Yeah, well, first of all, Margaret, a number of my Republican colleagues and some Democrats, too, have worked on this issue. And I think there is a bipartisan solution here because a lot of us care about this issue. I mean, look, I speak from this very personally because I'm married to a beautiful woman who is an incredible mother to our 3 beautiful kids, but is also a very, very brilliant corporate litigator. And I'm so proud of her. But being a working mom, even for somebody with all of the advantages of my wife, is extraordinarily difficult. And it's not just difficult from a policy perspective. She actually had access to paid family leave because she worked for a bigger company, but the cultural pressure on young families and especially young women, I think makes it really hard for people to choose the family model they want. A lot of young women would like to go back to work immediately. Some would like to spend a little time home with the kids. Some would like to spend longer at home with the kids. We should have a family care model that makes choice possible. And I think this is a very important substantive difference between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris's approach. I mean, look, if you look at the federal programs that we have that support paid family leave right now, the Community Development Block Grant, and there's another block grant program that spends a lot of money from the federal government. These programs only go to one kind of childcare model. Let's say you'd like your church maybe to help you out with childcare. Maybe you live in a rural area or an urban area and you'd like to get together with families in your neighborhood to provide childcare in the way that makes the most sense. You don't get access to any of these federal monies. We want to promote choice in how we deliver family care and how we promote childcare, because look, it is unacceptable. And, of course, Tim and I have been on the campaign trail a lot the past 7 or 8 weeks. And one of the biggest complaints I hear from young families is people who feel like they don't have options, like they're choosing between going to work or taking care for their kids. That is an incredible burden to put on American families. We're the only country that does it. I think we could do a heck of a lot better.
Senator, thank you. You have also said, Senator Vance, many things about the American family. The Federal Reserve says parents will spend nearly as much on childcare as they do on housing each month. So I want to get your thoughts on this. President Trump recently said, as much as childcare is talked about as being expensive, it's relatively speaking not very expensive compared to the kinds of numbers we'll be taking in. Is President Trump committed to the $5,000 per child tax credit that you have described? You have 1 minute.
Well, what President Trump said, Margaret, I just want to defend my running mate here a little bit, is that we're going to be taking in a lot of money by penalizing companies for shipping jobs overseas and penalizing countries who employ slave laborers and then ship their products back into our country and undercut the wages of American workers. It's the heart of the Donald Trump economic plan. Cut taxes for American workers and American families, cut taxes for businesses that are hiring and building companies in the United States of America, but penalize companies and countries that are shipping jobs overseas. That's the heart of the economic proposal. And I think what President Trump is saying is that when we bring in this additional revenue with higher economic growth, we're going to be able to provide paid family leave, childcare options that are viable and workable for a lot of American families.
Can you clarify how that will solve the childcare shortage?
Well, because as Tim said, a lot of the childcare shortage is we just don't have enough resources going into the multiple people who could be providing family care options. And we're going to have to, unfortunately, look, we're going to have to spend more money. We're going to have to induce more people to want to provide childcare options for American families, because the reason it's so expensive right now is because you've got way too few people providing this very essential service.
Thank you, Senator. Governor Walz, your ticket also has some child care tax credit proposals. Do you think Congress will agree to the $6,000 credit for newborns and $3,000 credit for children over the age of 6, as your campaign has promised? Is that realistic?
Well, if these members of Congress are listening to anybody, I can tell you, and this is the biggest issue. Everybody listening tonight knows. I mean, I'm sure they were shocked to hear it's not that expensive. And let's be clear, whether it's $5,000 or $6,000, that pays you about 3 or 4 months. Let's be clear of where we're at on this. It's because we got out of an imbalance on this. We thought we were going to get by not paying people. I don't think Senator Vance and I are that far apart. I'm not opposed to what he's talking about on options. We've done scholarships types of things. I think we need to be open to making the case. But the issue here is, the question you asked is, you're not going to pay for it with these tariffs. That's just adding another $4,000 on the family and taking less. So not only do they not get the money to pay for that, they're $4,000 in the hole. That's Wharton School. That's his alma mater. And so I think the issue here is, if those members of Congress, I can't believe they're not. When I go to businesses, sure, they'll talk about taxes sometime, but they will lead with childcare and they will lead with housing, because we know the problem is, especially in a state like Minnesota, we need more workers because our economy is growing, but we need the workforce.
Governor, thank you. We need to move on. Nora?
Let's talk about the state of democracy, the top issue for Americans after the economy and inflation. After the 2020 election, President Trump's campaign and others filed 62 lawsuits contesting the results. Judges, including those appointed by President Trump and other Republican presidents, looked at the evidence and said there was no widespread fraud. The governors of every state in the nation, Republicans and Democrats, certified the 2020 election results and sent a legal slate of electors to Congress for January 6th. Senator Vance, you have said you would not have certified the last presidential election and would have asked the states to submit alternative electors. That has been called unconstitutional and illegal. Would you again seek to challenge this year's election results, even if every governor certifies the results? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Well, Nora, first of all, I think that we're focused on the future. We need to figure out how to solve the inflation crisis caused by Kamala Harris's policies, make housing affordable, make groceries affordable, and that's what we're focused on. But I want to answer your question because you did ask it. Look, what President Trump has said is that there were problems in 2020, and my own belief is that we should fight about those issues, debate those issues peacefully in the public square, and that's all I've said, and that's all that Donald Trump has said. Remember, he said that on January the 6th, the protesters ought to protest peacefully. And on January the 20th, what happened? Joe Biden became the president. Donald Trump left the White House. And now, of course, unfortunately, we have all of the negative policies that have come from the Harris-Biden administration. I believe that we actually do have a threat to democracy in this country, but unfortunately, it's not the threat to democracy that Kamala Harris and Tim Walz want to talk about. It is the threat of censorship. It's Americans casting aside lifelong friendships because of disagreements over politics. It's big technology companies silencing their fellow citizens. And it's Kamala Harris saying that rather than debate and persuade her fellow Americans, she'd like to censor people who engage in misinformation. I think that is a much bigger threat to democracy than anything that we've seen in this country in the last 4 years, in the last 40 years. Now, I'm really proud, especially given that I was raised by two lifelong blue-collar Democrats, to have the endorsement of Bobby Kennedy Jr. and Tulsi Gabbard, lifelong leaders in the Democratic coalition. And of course, they don't agree with me and Donald Trump on every issue. We don't have to agree on every issue, but we're united behind a basic American First Amendment principle that we ought to debate our differences. We ought to argue about them. We ought to try to persuade our fellow Americans. Kamala Harris is engaged in censorship at an industrial scale. She did it during COVID. She's done it over a number of other issues. And that, to me, is a much bigger threat to democracy than what Donald Trump said when he said that protesters should peacefully protest on January the 6th.
Governor?
Well, I've enjoyed tonight's debate, and I think there was a lot of commonality here. And I'm sympathetic to misspeaking on things, and I think I might have with the senator. But
me too, man.
There's one though that this one is troubling to me, and I say that because I think we need to tell the story. Donald Trump refused to acknowledge this, and the fact is that I don't think we can be the frog in the pot and let the boiling water go up. He was very clear. I mean, he lost this election, and he said he did. 140 police officers were beaten at the Capitol that day. Some with the American flag, several later died. And it wasn't just in there. In Minnesota, a group gathered on the state capitol grounds in St. Paul and said, we're marching to the governor's residence and there may be casualties. The only person there was my son and his dog, who was rushed out crying by state police. That issue and Mike Pence standing there as they were chanting, hang Mike Pence. Mike Pence made the right decision. So, Senator, it was adjudicated over and over and over. I worked with kids long enough to know, and I said as a football coach, sometimes you really want to win, but the democracy is bigger than winning an election. You shake hands, and then you try and do everything you can to help the other side win. That's what was at stake here. Now, the thing I'm most concerned about is the idea that imprisoning your political opponents, already laying the groundwork for people not accepting this. And a president's words matter. A president's words matter. People hear that. So I think this issue of settling our differences at the ballot box, shaking hands when we lose, being honest about it, but to deny what happened on January 6th, the first time in American history that a president or anyone tried to overturn a fair election and the peaceful transfer of power. And here we are 4 years later in the same boat. I will tell you this, that when this is over, we need to shake hands this election, and the winner needs to be the winner. This has got to stop. It's tearing our country apart.
Margaret?
Senator Vance, did you want to respond to that?
Yeah, well, look, Tim, first of all, it's really rich for Democratic leaders to say that Donald Trump is a unique threat to democracy when he peacefully gave over power on January the 20th, as we have done for 250 years in this country. We are going to shake hands after this debate and after this election. And of course, I hope that we win, and I think we're going to win. But if Tim Walz is the next vice president, he'll have my prayers, he'll have my best wishes, and he'll have my help whenever he wants it. But we have to remember that for years in this country, Democrats protested the results of elections. Hillary Clinton in 2016 said that Donald Trump had the election stolen by Vladimir Putin because the Russians bought like $500,000 worth of Facebook ads. This has been going on for a long time. And if we want to say that we need to respect the results of the election, I'm on board. But if we want to say, as Tim Walz is saying, that this is just a problem that Republicans have had, I don't buy that.
Governor.
January 6th was not Facebook ads. And I think a revisionist history on this. Look, I don't understand how we got to this point. But the issue was that happened. Donald Trump can do it. And all of us say there's no place for this. It has massive repercussions. This idea that there's censorship to stop people from threatening to kill someone, threatening to do something, that's not censorship. Censorship is book banning. We've seen that. We've seen that brought up. I just think for everyone tonight, and I'm going to thank Senator Vance. I think this is the conversation they want to hear. And I think there's a lot of agreement. But this is one that we are miles apart on. This was a threat to our democracy in a way that we had not seen. And it manifested itself because of Donald Trump's inability to say. He is still saying he didn't lose the election. I would just ask that. Did he lose the 2020 election?
Tim, I'm focused on the future. Did Kamala Harris censor Americans from speaking their mind in the wake of the 2020 COVID situation?
That is a damning non-answer.
It's a damning non-answer for you to not talk about censorship. Obviously, Donald Trump and I think that there were problems in 2020. We've talked about it. I'm happy to talk about it further. But you guys attack us for not believing in democracy. The most sacred right under the United States democracy is the First Amendment. You yourself have said there's no First Amendment right to misinformation. Kamala Harris wants to use the power of government and big tech to silence people from speaking their minds. That is a threat to democracy that will long outlive this present political moment. I would like Democrats and Republicans to both reject censorship. Let's persuade one another. Let's argue about ideas, and then let's come together afterwards.
You can't yell fire in a crowded theater. That's the test. That's the Supreme Court test.
Tim, fire in a crowded theater. You guys wanted to kick people off of Facebook for saying that toddlers shouldn't wear a mask.
Senator, the governor does have the floor.
Fire in a crowded theater. That is criticizing the policies of the government, which is the right of every American.
Senator, the governor does have the floor for 1 minute to respond to you.
Yeah. Well, I don't run Facebook. What I do know is I see a candidate out there who refused, and now again, and this, I'm pretty shocked by this. He lost the election. This is not a debate. It's not anything anywhere other than in Donald Trump's world. Because look, when Mike Pence made that decision to certify that election, that's why Mike Pence isn't on this stage. What I'm concerned about is, where is the firewall with Donald Trump? Where is the firewall if he knows he could do anything, including taking an election, and his vice president's not going to stand to it? That's what we're asking you, America. Will you stand up? Will you keep your oath of office, even if the president doesn't? And I think Kamala Harris would agree. She wouldn't have picked me if she didn't think I would do that, because of course that's what we would do. So America, I think you've got a really clear choice on this election of who's going to honor that democracy and who's going to honor Donald Trump.
Governor, your time is up. Thank you, gentlemen. We will be right back with both of our candidates. The CBS News vice presidential debate continues.
All right. Waltz 20, Vance 1.
At this point, I don't even know if you're telling the truth. I think you probably believe.
I think I will give the JD Vance is a way better communicator. I'm listening. I agree with Waltz policy-wise and mostly what he's saying. But sometimes I'm listening to him. I'm like, what the fuck are we talking about right now? Like,
so
I don't even know where we're going. So like, I do definitely agree with that.
Let's remember the foundational thing, guys. If you guys want to be closers and communicate as well or better than JD Vance, closerscollective.com.
Better get fucking paid on that.
/Jonah because he wants to get his affiliate pay for this.
You better use my affiliate link.
Jonah, I gotta figure this out. I gotta know, dude. In my head, I'm hearing Walls just repeatedly lie. Are you just
What is he
not
lying
hearing
about?
that? Are you not like
What is he
paying
lying
attention to
about?
those things, or are
Like,
you
what do you
just
think?
unaware?
Just what things? What is he lying about? What do you think he's lying about?
Literally commented every time he lied about something.
Can you name one? Name one.
So you need me to go back and remember. the
Just
topic
remember
that I put
one,
out?
dude. You said he's lying so much. Just remember one fucking lie. I don't hear it. So tell me the goddamn lie that you think he's
You're making-
lying about. Like, just, yeah, go
not
back in
picking
the
up the
comments
line?
if you need to. As I don't think he's lying. I think he is
He literally said
not
that there were
communicating
more
well.
border crossings during Trump's administration.
Yeah, I don't
He
know what
said
the fuck
they have
that was.
gone down.
That was a
since
little
Trump
weird.
left office.
I would have to. I
It's
actually
not a
don't
little
know,
weird,
actually.
Jonah. It's a lie.
Well,
This
I
is
mean,
why you
whatever.
can't tell when they're lying because you don't want to call it a lie.
was
It's a
one.
little weird.
I mean, that was one, right? But other than that, I'm not hearing him. I'm not hearing him continually lie, right? I'm not looking for lies. I'm looking I assume they're just wrong about things. Like I don't think they're lying. So for instance, when I hear
All right, that's fair. No, that's
like,
fair.
when I hear JD Vance talking about tariffs, right? How like tariffs like reduce or make the economy better. That's just not true. Tariffs are just taxes. I don't know if you guys fucking know that, right? Like not like you people, but I'm just saying they're literally just saying I'm going to increase taxes, right? In a way that might protect manufacturing, but it's also going to it will increase. I agree with the economists. I don't know why the fuck they were both agreeing on this. It will increase prices to have all manufacturing in America.
So
I agree with the goddamn economists on that one. I don't think they're lying. I just think they're wrong. So that's how I feel about it.
let me ask you an honest question. We got to do this now. In fairness to everybody, he has actually asked me about this. I know your answer, but I'm going to ask it out loud. I asked this in the chat. Who do you think the 2020 election was stolen or attempted to be stolen in any way, Jonah? Yes or no?
Dude, it was 100% attempted by Trump, and I have 4 hours of research. You won't let me goddamn release. Quijano is part of the establishment media that's trying to keep information from you right now, ladies and gentlemen. I did this research 2 months ago, and he is not letting me release it on this goddamn podcast.
I'm
So
Mark
realize
Zuckerberg,
that.
bro. Mark
And
Zuckerberg.
until we do this podcast, into the podcast about Trump and
So
how he
you
tried to
think
steal the
that
election.
Not only
This is the defining
so
issue.
the
for me, by
Democrats
the way.
did not attempt to steal the election. Donald Trump did, is the thing that you're saying.
100%.
All right. There we go, ladies and gentlemen. This is what I have to deal with in a
Like
co-host.
that one, that
Guys,
is like the one where it's like unbelievably, like if you're actually paying attention, is so obvious to me.
All right.
I will release the research when you've
I can't
actually looked
wait.
at the research.
I have looked at the research. He wants it. We got to do this soon. Maybe in the next week or two. Obviously,
We
we got
have
to
to
do
do
it
it
soon
like
because the
next
election's
week or the
soon.
week after.
Yeah, because the
is in a
election's
month.
coming soon. All right, let's go. Let's
Yeah.
go.
Oh, we're back.
Welcome back to the CBS News Vice Presidential Debate. It is now time for the closing statement. Senator Vance won the virtual coin toss and elected to go last. So, Governor Walz, you are first. You have 2 minutes.
Well, thank you, Senator Vance. Thank you to CBS News. And most importantly, thank you to all of you. If you're still up and the folks who miss Dancing with Our Stars, I appreciate it. But look, the support of the democracy matters. It matters that you're here. And I'm as surprised as anybody of this coalition that Kamala Harris has built, from Bernie Sanders to Dick Cheney to Taylor Swift, and a whole bunch of folks in between there. And they don't all agree on everything, but they are truly optimistic people. They believe in a positive future of this country and one where our politics can be better than it is. And I have to tell you that that better than it is the sense of optimism that there can be an opportunity economy that works for everyone, not just to get by, but to get ahead. And the idea that freedom really means something, not the freedom of government to be in your bedroom or exam room, but the freedom for you to make choices about yourself. Now, look, we all know who Donald Trump is. He's told us, and as Maya Angelou said, believe him when he told you that. His first inaugural address talked about American carnage. And then he spoke spent 4 years trying to maybe do that. Senator Vance tonight made it clear he will stand with Donald Trump's agenda. He will continue to push down that road. Excuse me. Kamala Harris gives us a different option. Now, I'll have to tell you, I'm going to be careful about the quotes, but there's one that Senator Vance said that does resonate with me. He said, Donald Trump makes the people I care about afraid. A lot of America feels that way. We don't need to be afraid. Franklin Roosevelt was right. All we have to fear is fear itself. Kamala Harris is bringing us a new way forward. She's bringing us a politics of joy. She's bringing real solutions for the middle class, and she's centering you at the heart of that. All the while asking everyone, join this movement, make your voices heard. Let's look for a new day where everybody gets that opportunity and everybody gets a chance to thrive. I humbly ask for your vote on November 5th for Kamala Harris.
Governor Walz, thank you. Senator Vance, your closing statement.
Well, I want to thank Governor Walz, you folks at CBS, and of course the American people for tuning in this evening. And one of the issues we didn't talk about was energy. And I remember when I was being raised by my grandmother, when she didn't have enough money to turn on the heat some nights because Ohio gets pretty cold at night and because money was often very tight. And I believe, as a person who wants to be your next vice president, that we are a rich and prosperous enough country where every American, whether they're rich or poor, ought to be able to turn on their heat in the middle of a cold winter night. That's gotten more difficult thanks to Kamala Harris's energy policies. I believe that whether you're rich or poor, you ought to be able to afford a nice meal for your family. That's gotten harder because of Kamala Harris's policies. I believe that whether you're rich or poor, you ought to be able to afford to buy a house. You ought to be able to live in safe neighborhoods. You ought to not have your communities flooded with fentanyl. And that too has gotten harder with Kamala because of Kamala Harris's policies. Now, I've been in politics long enough to do what Kamala Harris does when she stands before the American people and says that on day one, she's going to work on all these challenges I just listed. She's been the vice president for 3.5 years. Day one was 1,400 days ago, and her policies have made these problems worse. Now, I believe that we have the most beautiful country in the world. I meet people on the campaign trail who can't afford food, but have the grace and generosity to ask me how I'm doing and to tell me they're praying for my family. What that has taught me is that we have the greatest country, the most beautiful country, the most incredible people anywhere in the world. But they're not going to be able to achieve their full dreams with the broken leadership that we have in Washington. They're not going to be able to live their American dream if we do the same thing that we've been doing for the last 3.5 years. We need change. We need a new direction. We need a president who has already done this once before and did it well. Please vote for Donald Trump. And whether you vote for me or vote for Tim Walz, I just want to say I'm so proud to be doing this, and I'm rooting for you. God bless you and good night.
Senator Vance, thank you. And thank you both for participating in the only vice presidential debate of this election cycle. I'm Margaret Brennan.
And I'm Nora O'Donnell. And a reminder, there are just 35 days until Election Day. Please get out and vote. And for all of us here at CBS News, thank you and good night.
Cool.
35 days till Election Day. That's crazy, bro.
I'm so not looking forward to it. I feel
Why?
like
Because you're on the fence on whether or
feel
not you
like-
should vote for Trump?
No, I feel like whoever wins, it's just going to be pure chaos. Kamala wins, I think conservatives are going to go crazy, and I think if liberals win, or I'm sorry, I think if Trump wins, I think liberals are going to go crazy.
Okay.
And I'm worried about that.
Define each, right? What happens? How do the conservatives, how does the right go crazy in your opinion?
Probably something similar to January 6th ish, and then liberals
So one
probably
building
something.
gets rushed, even though 80% of the people were let in the doors and given tours, and that's crazy. Okay, right? No disrespect to the
One
people.
building
negative
being
feedback.
the capital of our
Okay.
country that was trying to certify the election and was stopped due to protesters who were riled up by the current sitting president that the election was stolen when
Okay.
he brought every single case to court and none of them turned into anything.
Fair.
So
Okay, so
that's
what
what happened.
happens? How do the liberals go crazy? What do they do?
Probably similar when Trump got elected the first time. Protests. It would be decently crazy in the sense there'd be like a lot of public protesting, right? Like I remember when Trump got elected the first time, where like everyone was just like randomly like we're going to the streets and be crazy, right? And just screaming and hats, and I just am not looking forward to it.
Did you say
either way.
screaming in hats or screaming cats?
Yeah, like the what's it called? The vagina hats they have or whatever. You know what I'm talking about? Sorry, whatever. Like you know those hats, like the woman's hats, right? Anyways, whatever. I sound like an idiot. The pussy hats or whatever they call them.
All right, fair enough.
That's what I think is gonna happen. I mean, we've seen both scenarios, right? So I'm not looking
All right.
forward to it either way.
You're not looking forward to the vagina hats?
No.
Okay, that's fair. I respect that. All right, man. So, like, how do you think this thing played out tonight? Give me your honest opinion.
I think if I was a full independent, and let's say I just didn't let's say I just didn't know who was telling the truth at all. I had no facts.
Okay.
I had no bias whatsoever. JD Vance obviously is a better communicator. I think that felt real, that moment where he had with Waltz, where he's like, God, I am so sorry your son had to deal with that, right? I was actually felt like a real moment. Maybe it was lying political BS, but
Yeah.
I don't think so. That's actually felt like I'm actually genuinely sorry that happened to you, right? I think he had more moments like that. I think he was more relatable. I think he's just wrong on all the policy shit, right? But you know, for someone who didn't care about the policy or didn't know about the policy, I think they would say JD Vance hands down, probably.
Okay. Interesting. I would ask what policy things you thought he was crazy about, but that's a whole conversation we don't have to get into.
Well, that's
But
just going to be things that we disagree on, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
that's fine.
the whole election thing, all that's bullshit. Like what he was talking about. What he's talking about with I just disagree with him on abortion, right? I mean, that's just like a whole nother talk. I just disagree with him on that one. Abortion's like one where it's like, I think there's
yeah,
a
we got to
real
do a whole
debate.
show on that. We got to bring people on here.
Yeah.
I'd like to hear some different perspectives on that. We
I
got to
would love to
do,
bring on tons of women. I got so much shit for that.
bro.
globally,
Just so you
really.
guys know, do you guys remember when Jonah said that women were stupid here on the
Bro,
podcast?
I like literally Vina went off on me a little bit for that one. Like just jokingly, but like that was crazy. I would love women to be on for that one. I think that would
Yeah,
be
no, that would be super cool. We definitely got to do a Second Amendment one. Jeremy would like to be on here for
Dominique,
that.
I'm not in my safe space, bro. I'm always in the non-safe space. That's what this podcast is for me. Gonna throw it out.
I know you got to give it to him because, in fairness, Dominic, his people are not here to support him. Usually, every once in a while, you see somebody. If you see somebody coming in here and getting super emotional, usually they're on his side.
See a liberal, give a hug. That's what I'll say.
See a liberal, give a hug, wearing a vagina hat. But no, man. All jokes aside, like it was an interesting debate. You know, the Trump-Harris one was a different situation. This one was a lot more clear for me. You know, I think that him being an excellent communicator definitely gave him a heads up. I just didn't really see. I just saw Vance as really dry, as just the way he presented. But he started off with attacks. His first two answers were all attack-based. He was just like going for the throat. I've never been a big fan of just the
Vance or Waltz?
Waltz. I'm sorry, Waltz. Waltz. Yeah,
Okay,
Waltz is yeah. My apologies. Yeah, Waltz was just going on the attack. I've never been a big fan of always just like trashing your opponent. I think it's childish. I think it's silly. I don't know why politicians do this. I think it's childish. It's stupid. And he just started down that road. I think Vance.
It just depends.
Maybe. But here's the thing. I
Like if
think
they really fucked something up. But like I agree, he did that a lot.
Yeah, but Vance did a great job of really taking a high road, of being classy, of not going down that stuff, and really just having a good conversation. I think Vance did a great job with that. I think that Vance was more honest. Now, to your point, maybe it was just wrong information. Like maybe Walz actually believes that immigration has gone down since Harris. Maybe in his head, because he said it like 6 times, maybe the immigration policy, which is still supposedly better than it was when Trump was in office, according to his own words, maybe it's so bad, even though it's better, because of that one vote that happened before Trump got out of office. And unfortunately, because that vote didn't go their way, they have now been handcuffed and unable to go to work
They've been trying
on
to
this
pass
topic.
the bill in the entire time through Congress. Trump's been blocking it because he's like, I won't support you as a Republican candidate if you vote for this bill. And Republicans wrote this bill. We could do a
So-
whole episode on it.
Okay, so
But-
let me just to summarize your point. What you're telling me is that the vice president that you keep giving a pass to for doing absolutely nothing in the last 4 years, because, well, they're just the vice president. They can't really do anything. She can't do anything because she's just vice president. But Trump, who's nothing in politics, can block Congress? Right? Like at what point do
He
we
can
stop giving
definitely-
BS?
Trump- I think Trump has inordinate power over the Republican Party. I think it's unparalleled. I think if Trump snaps his finger and you're a Republican running for office, if he says he's against you, you don't get voted in.
Trump's a
I don't
wizard.
think that happens.
We've just
That is
established.
how much power Trump has over Republicans. You guys
Like
follow
Lord of
him
the
like a
Rings level wizard?
lapdog.
So here's the last poll. Is Donald Trump Gandalf? Maybe that's why he does so well, because Donald Trump is secretly a wizard. Here's the thing, bro. This is where I think that, and I'll say you because I'm speaking to you. I can't speak for a whole side, right? I'll speak for you. Here's the thing, bro. I think this is where you guys get a little, you guys get weak. You fold. You can't sit here and come out your mouth on one side and try to sell me that the reason that Harris hasn't done anything for the last 4 years is because vice presidents don't have any power, but then simultaneously sell me that Donald Trump, who is neither president nor vice president, has more power than her, right? At what point do you just take accountability and say, you know what, maybe we can't stop blaming Trump the boogeyman for all of our problems, and we can't stop, it can't simultaneously excuse the person who literally was given the job and has done nothing with it. Like, at what point?
Well, in my
is there
opinion,
just accountability?
Congress is what matters. In like, people blame presidents for immigration. Congress is the fucking issue in the end, right? So, for instance, I mean, I can say the same thing when Republicans say like Trump was so much better on the border. It's like, okay, then why didn't he build the wall? Right? He didn't actually build the wall. He built like almost none of the fucking wall. Right? I could say he was just lying and he didn't ever mean to, and it's just, that's not true. What it is Congress didn't really give him the wall. Right? He wasn't able to work with Congress. Right? So I blame Congress for the immigration problem more than presidents, to be honest. I
Interesting.
appreciate you, Jeremy. I appreciate it. In the end, Congress is responsible. It's just dependent on like who's pushing people to do certain things in Congress, right? So Democrats are trying to pass a Republican bill. It was written by Republicans. And why aren't Republicans supporting a Republican bill anymore? Only because of Trump. That's the only reason. That's why it's such a big issue, right? In terms of Trump not being able to build the wall, yeah, Democrats didn't want to fucking build the wall. Then they blocked it, right? So anyways,
Yeah,
in
it's
the end,
interesting,
it's
Peter.
Congress, it's politicians playing with political games, and it fucking frustrates me. Both sides do this. It really
Yeah.
annoys me when they like are just putting Americans' best interests. They're putting election results over Americans' best interests. It pisses
Yeah,
me
and here's
off.
the thing, bro. Like, I think you make a really good point, and to Vance's detriment, this is the crap that I don't like. Like, have a backbone, bro. You can't be out here just trashing Donald Trump, and then all of a sudden you get the opportunity for VP, and now you out here supporting the same things you used to trash. This is the type of stuff that I don't have a lot of respect for. Now, is there a possibility that this man just had a drastic revelational change of heart? Sure, maybe he did. But at the end of the day, stop it, bro. And this is also actually against your point. This idea that Republicans just bend to the will of Donald Trump. No, they don't, dude. There were countless Republicans who trashed this dude publicly, Vance included. So he did not have an overwhelming magical power over the Republican Party. He actually had as many fights against the Republican Party as he did with anybody else. In so much that the Democrats used that as an example countless times of how bad of a leader he was because his own party fought against him. So I don't have a huge amount of respect. Now, I don't know the backstory, but I just don't respect that very much. You can't be out here just trashing this dude. Now his best friend, right? I think it shows a lack of character, but I don't think character is the measure anymore. It's something else. It's catchphrases and it's quips and it's funny lines and it's manipulating the masses.
That's all anyone cares about. I've decided. I have figured out politics. Everyone just cares about zingers and vibes. I've decided. No one gives a fuck other than that. Everyone watches debates so they can see if their side gets the quips in there. And
Yeah.
I don't.
And to
I
be
just
honest with
don't
you-
know. I don't know what swing voters decide on. I'm confused how there are anyone undecided at this
But
point.
here's the thing: who cares about policies? None of these policies that get put out there 90% of the time actually get put into law, anyways. Do you actually, honest opinion, Jonah? I don't mean Democrats as a voting bloc. I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about the politicians. Which do you think is more true? Do you think they are actually this emotionally moved by the abortion issue that we haven't heard anything about until it's election season? Or do you think that this is just a hot point that they're bringing up because they know it's going to get people in their feelings, and they make this a major issue for the voting? Which do you think it actually is?
Honestly, for abortion, I have no idea. I think it depends on the person. I think some people probably are just using it for power, and some people actually do care about it. That's how
The
I feel
people
about
that are-
politicians.
What do you think about Harrison Walls?
I truly don't know. Like, I can't I don't know, because here's the thing, right? I think generally people are I'm just theorizing now, right?
Sure.
I'm not stuck to this opinion. I think generally people care about things that are personal to them, right? So I don't know how much abortion has affected their lives, right? I think
Sure.
generally emotions go down if you aren't personally affected by it, and emotions go up when you are personally affected, right? Generally. So I don't know. Like, I truly don't know is my honest answer. I can't tell.
Here's the thing, right? When I look at this, I actually believe that. I don't know if that's true, but I would believe that without question, because that was her circle back in the day. Here's my honest opinion, man. And I'm going to be honest with you. I genuinely don't know. Well, let me phrase this. I wish I didn't have to say this. I don't think Kamala cares about this country at all. I don't
so
think she cares
why?
about the voters at all. I don't think she cares at all. Why what?
Why do you think that?
Because 0% of anything about her, what she says, what she's done, who she is, how she presents herself, or any of those things leads me to in any way believe she cares. I think there was a gap by the powers that be who needed to put somebody. Let me ask you an honest question, Jonah. Honest question. How many people are in this country? Ballpark. Do you know the answer? How many American citizens there are?
Dishonestly, 350 million.
Okay, we'll go with that, right? Let me ask you a question. Do you think that of the 350 million people that are in this country, right? Let's throw a random number. What percentage of those people are Democrats?
I think it's like 100 million. I think I actually saw a poll on this. I think it's about 100 million Democrats, 100 million Republicans, and everyone else just either doesn't respond or doesn't care.
Okay. Let me ask you an honest question, and I want you to be as honest as you can with me, bro. Just tell me the truth.
I'm just gonna lie.
Do you think out of those 100 million people, there are at least, I don't know, 100, 1,000, 10,000, a million, I don't know, people that are smarter and more capable, just overall, as a person, than Kamala Harris?
I don't know about a million. Yeah, for sure 10,000, for sure 1,000. And I think all of those people would be more capable than Trump also, to be honest.
Fair enough. So here's my question for you, bro. Because I can answer this question for the right. I can't answer this question for the left. Why is it that of all of the intelligent, smart, capable people on this planet, we didn't have any options? The only freaking option that we had was Kamala Harris. Are you joking me right now? Now we can go down the argument of, oh, well, it was just a last minute thing and she's a vice president. Here's the reality, dude. The powers that be needed someone they knew they could control that was the most likely that they could prop up. The same person polled miserably 4 years ago. Didn't even make it far at all into presidential stuff. 4 years later, her popularity levels are this high. What changed, Jonah? Did she magically become more smart, capable, persuasive, influential? Right? Did she do
Well,
something in
no,
the
hold
last
on.
4 years?
You want to
Hold
look
on.
at Donald
To
Trump's...
finish my point.
Okay,
To
sorry.
finish my point, though, right? To what is anything about her demonstrated anything that makes us be able to say logically with an intelligent brain, this woman deserves to have the uptick in popularity that she's gotten by numbers of millions of people in the last 4 years. She's earned that. That makes sense. Or is it more likely that the media machine is just doing the game? They were like, all right, we ain't got nobody else. This is somebody we can control. There's no other realistic option. So let's just put her in here and we'll let the media make her look like this super person. We'll talk to our people in influential communities, the Black community, this community, the celebrities. We'll talk to all of these people. And what we're going to do is the same thing we always do. We're going to manipulate people to think this was their decision. We're going to manipulate people to think that this person is actually the person we told them to be. 4 years ago, nobody thought this. She's the same person with the same background. And like everything's the same with the exception of the fact that she's been in a particular role for the last 4 years that she's done nothing with. 4 years ago, none of these things registered with anybody. The same Black community didn't want anything to do with her. The same voting blocks wanted nothing to do with her. She was still running for a Democrat. Nothing that this woman has done over the last 4 years has warranted this increase in popularity, which means one of three things. Something happened that I don't know of. It warranted this increase in popularity. That's option one. Option two, she was never popular, and they're just lying to make her seem more popular. And honestly, I'll just leave that there. I'll just leave it at those two options.
Well,
Either
no,
has
she's popular, and here's why: is because I think it's a huge thing that we had this kind of last minute thing that was done, right? You can argue like, hey, I think, and this is going to drive you crazy, Keanu, for me to say,
Sure.
I think Joe Biden did one of the most heroic things dropping out of the race. I think the fact that he was willing to give up power, because he could have said, fuck you guys. And
you think that's possible? You actually think this man is actually making his own decisions on any of these topics, bro?
I think he is. I think if he had said, fuck you guys, I'm running again. I'm a demented man and I don't give a shit. I think he would have still ran. I think he was like, you know what? I'm getting way too fucking old for this shit. I need to back down in order to make it where we get a Democrat in place at the very least and we don't have Trump again, right? So to answer your question anyways, so like where I was going with that is Trump wasn't that popular when he ran the first time until he became the candidate, right? So at the very beginning, he wasn't very popular. And then he got more popularity as he kept winning states. More people jumped on that bandwagon, right? When someone becomes the candidate for a specific party, eventually I'm like, look, Kamala Harris believes way more in what I believe in than Trump does. So now I'm going to vote.
But why do you think? I'm sorry.
Well, she does because she said it. She said policies that I agree with way more than what Trump has said are his policies.
Can I ask you an honest question? And I don't want to interrupt the point you're making, but I just want to ask an honest question, right? Because literally you just said, well, I like her because she believes in what I believe in. And I mean this as respectfully as possible, bro. Because that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life, and you are not a stupid person. You cannot possibly look me in my eyes through this digital camera and tell me that your brain is naive enough to accept that it just so happens that these primary talking points that the news has drilled in our head what is right and wrong, she just happens to agree with the same things as you. When these same candidates, just like Vance did for Trump, literally had different opinions on these exact same policies when the need for it was different for politics. Bro, they're fucking lying to you, dude. They're lying, Jonah.
She
They are
agrees
literally
more.
saying, no, bro. They're saying, what is the popular topic for this electoral process, for this election season? What are the hot points? What are we supposed to be saying? This is what I say. Joe Biden and Obama, when gay marriage was a negative thing for the country, they vehemently and obviously said that it's a horrible thing. It should be between a man and a woman. When it becomes a different popularity issue, I vehemently agree. Love is just love, and people should have human rights. Dude, like fucking stop it, bro. They don't believe in this crap. They don't care about this. Harris does not care about abortion. She does not care about immigration, as shown by what they don't care, bro. So for you and I mean this with love, y'all. Forgive my emotions. I'm gonna say this point. I'm gonna shut up, Jonah. I'm gonna
You're
say
getting emotional, dude. I
I'm
thought
so
conservatives
emotional. I'm
weren't
all
supposed to
up
be
in my feelings.
emotional, bro.
I'm all up in my feelings right now, bro. I'm
Why you so
super
emotional, man.
I don't know, bro. I don't know. Here's the
Calm
thing,
it
bro.
down,
Like,
dude.
I will calm down. Let me control myself. Here's the
Oh,
thing,
yeah,
bro.
yeah.
This is what drives me crazy. It drives me crazy that there's American people out here who are literally letting themselves believe, oh, I'm voting for this person because we share the same values. And we're dumb enough to believe that. No, you don't. Harris has flip-flopped on whatever she needs to serve the American people. Oh, wait, that's not what she's doing. She's doing it to serve their agenda for the team that she's playing on. I don't think, respectfully, I mean as respectfully as possible, I don't think Harris is even intellectually involved enough in this whole process to care. I think if you asked her her own opinion, she would probably just say she doesn't really care. I just genuinely think that's her opinion. Now, if those are issues that matter to you, like if you, independently of the fact that they have thrown it in your face constantly your entire life, managed to personally have some strong opinion on abortion, go crazy. I'm going to say, no, the fuck you don't. The only reason you even have an opinion on this topic is because they told you it's a topic that you need to have an opinion on. That's what I would argue for most people. Now, for you personally, I don't know, but I would argue that most people, to your point, unless you have a personal experience with that, you getting all up in arms about a topic you actually have no personal relation to. You're only thinking it's important because the TV told you to think it's important. And now because you agree with what the TV told you to agree with, and then you hear the TV tell you that this political candidate thinks like you, now you get all in your feelings like, oh, they just share my values. The fuck are you talking about? No, they don't. And we need to just stop being stupid. One thing I will give Trump, because y'all have heard me talk my negative fair share about my opinions on Trump. What I will tell you about that dude is I believe, whether I believe with what he says, how he says it, or a million different things, I believe he believes what he's saying. And that's one thing that I think actually serves him, because people who are smart enough to detect when somebody's lying to them appreciate the fact that for the most part, Trump believes the stuff that he says. And at the very least, that's something. Like, so I apologize. I'm gonna shut up. But bro, like, simply
Do you
put,
want me to answer that question?
Like, I guess here's my question after my rant. I'm
You
sorry.
already asked the question. I know your question.
Like,
You said
do
the question.
you honestly believe this? Like, you can't honestly believe this, bro.
So I'm gonna answer your question just with a quick question, just to because I think it will illustrate the answer. So I believe Roe v. Wade should be reinstituted via law, via Congress, right? Who's more likely to do that, Kamala or Trump?
Wait, say that again. I'm sorry. I was reading Travis's comment. Say that again.
So I believe, let's just take this as an example. I believe abortion should be exactly the same as Roe v. Wade. That's what I want in the country. Let's just say.
Okay.
Who's more likely to do that, Kamala or Trump?
Obviously
You're
not
right.
Trump.
Right. I agree with you. Harris is a politician. Politicians flip-flop on what they believe. It's still much more likely what I want to see happen in the country will happen if Kamala is president versus Trump.
But can I ask a quick response question?
Sure.
Okay. Bombs were just sent in the Middle East.
Mm-hmm.
We're in a major war in another part of the country. We're 5 steps away from actual World War III. Are you going to sit here and look at me in my face and tell me that abortion is a top tier issue for you, and I say this with no disrespect to people who are going through real life altering situations as a result of these policies. I mean this respectfully. I was raised by a single mother, right? I'm very respectful when it comes to women and their need to have a voice with things, right? But are you going to tell me that's the same level of importance to you, bro? Or is it just that important? Are you even talking about it right now because the freaking TV told you to talk about it? Bro, this is only an issue because the TV, now, when I say issue, I mean a political issue. It's only being talked about it this much because it's election season, bro. It's not because the left overwhelmingly concerns.
It also got repealed.
What do you mean?
It got repealed in the past couple of years.
Abortion. Sure. Right. Why weren't we hearing about it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week?
Yeah, it's also because it's election, but we're hearing about everything because
exactly. It's but that's my point, bro. This is how stupid people are. And the people that I'm talking to, I love y'all, but y'all are stupid sometimes, right? All of us. And here's why. Why are people stupid sometimes? Because we're not smart enough to recognize when we're getting played. We are actually
you make a good point. Like there are issues that are more important than others, right? I was answering your question. So if you want to ask me, like I was answering your question of like what I want to actually see happen in the country, right?
Okay.
Now,
okay.
In terms of what's happening in the Middle East, right? And we could argue about this because I do agree Trump did some really good things in the Middle East. I think he did some things that fucking are making happen what is happening now today, right?
Okay.
I think there are things he set up that are making what we see today. We had an incredibly good Iran deal under Obama, and then he just nuked it, pun intended. So, and then also he moved the the embassy to Jerusalem, right? He did certain things that stoked tensions that I think overboiled today. Now, I'm not going to say Biden's doing an amazing fucking job either in making sure this war isn't happening. I just don't believe Trump's going to do any better of a job. You think he would? I don't think he would. I think he would do just as bad or poorer. That's my personal opinion, and we could argue about it.
Why would we? You have on record at least 100 times come out your mouth and said that no question you liked the majority of Trump's foreign policy decisions and thought he did a good job when it comes to foreign policy.
I think he did a decent job, and he has done a lot of good things, and there's a lot of poor things he did as well, right?
Do you think the Jerusalem capital was one of them?
I think that was a poor decision.
Are you aware of the fact that 100% of the last 4, 5, 6, 7 presidents all promised to do
that?
They
didn't do it. Yeah, I knew that.
So what's better? Keep your promise or make promises you know you can't keep because it's going to have a negative effect?
If it means war, break the promise. It depends, right? I don't know. Now I can't say how much the Jerusalem embassy affected things in Israel. I don't know. I would say this, right? I would say that I think it's fucking, and I'm Jewish, right? I think it's kind of crazy that we're going to give Israel complete carte blanche to invade Lebanon. I think that's fucking stupid, right? What they did with Hamas, I think was justified. I don't feel like invading Lebanon is smart. I think what I honestly think is happening is the current administration is like, fuck me. We're about to get into an election. I don't want to rock the boat with the Jews, right? I truly believe that's what I think is happening, and that's bad. It's really bad, right? You should not be focusing so much on an election. You need to be like actually doing shit. I don't know if Trump's going to be any better. I just don't. I think there were things that I think nuking the Iran deal is leading to this thing where Iran is 2 weeks away from having nuclear weapons, right?
Hold on. But bro, first of all, I don't know what to disagree with.
I haven't heard what Trump would do. Like, he hasn't said what he'd do in terms of Israel. He just said, I'm going to solve the problem. But like, how are you going to solve the problem? He hasn't expressed
what he's
going to do. You know,
first of all, I agree.
You know what I mean? Like, he has to tell me what he's actually
going to do. I don't know what you mean. No, I don't know what you mean. Because first of all, the guy, here's our facts, right? Again, People getting in their emotions. Oh, I don't like him. I don't like the things that he says. Okay, nobody cares, right? Go cry about it and then come back and actually have an adult conversation.
Sure.
Nobody cares about your feelings about what they say as much as we should care about the impact of the things that they say. Now, that goes into a different conversation. However, everybody on the planet who had a negative opinion about Donald Trump swore Donald Trump was going to start World War III. And he reduced global conflict more than any other president in generations. Fact, not opinion. Fact. What happened? Why weren't all these wars happening when he was in office? Because of the same thing you've agreed with me on other podcasts. I don't know why you're seemingly flip-flopping on your opinion about how he handled these issues, but that's fine, right? Because you've multiple times said he did a great job with foreign policy. Now you're disagreeing with that. That's fine. You can explain that. But here's my thing.
Did some good things.
When it comes down to it, here's when it comes down to it, bro. Everybody was wrong. And nobody who was out there swearing dude was going to start World War III wants to talk about it. He resolved conflict better than any previous president.
Well, he
Period.
didn't really have any
Stop it.
conflicts
Stop
other
it.
than
Oh,
ISIS.
have
Maybe
you ever heard of, bro? Okay.
like
Yeah.
what conflicts showed up under his presidency?
Right.
And you
You're
can
right,
argue,
The-
that's him, or you could just say that there just happened to be less conflicts during those 4 years. The
You're
question
100%
is,
correct.
what did he
Russia
actually
and
do?
Ukraine didn't have any issues until Harris got into office. That was brand new, right? That had never been a problem before. Putin was never like this beforehand.
Yeah, he didn't do
Right.
anything with Ukraine.
The
though.
Middle East, no problems. That was totally fine before
Well,
this.
wait a
too.
minute. Nothing new happened. Like, wait, hold on. What did he do? So, like, here's my question. I think he did a good job with ISIS. That was one of the good things he did, right? I think he did a lot of good peace deals in the Middle East. I think he did a lot of good things. I think he fucked up the Iran deal, which is making this situation way more dangerous than it would be if he hadn't done that, right? That we're dealing with right now, right? So he didn't fix the Middle East. He did a lot of good things and a lot of bad things, right? What I
He
need to
did
see
way
now,
more good than any other president had in forever. And the reason I believe why is because nobody wanted to. I told you my opinion on this. The powers that be, who are they want the problems over there because it serves the long-term agenda, right? The reason I just think that's really what it comes down to. They're just doing what they would have done anyways. This all would have been happening a couple of years ago. Trump got in and got in the way, right? Again, you can like him or dislike him, but one thing that nobody with a brain can disagree with, that this guy is just not a part of the system. How do we know this? Because the system attacks the shit out of him endlessly without relenting. You know what that same system does not do? Does not attack this woman. You know what's crazy to me, bro? Here's what's crazy to me. Watching people sit here and act like Kamala Harris is a friend to the black community. Are you joking me? This woman locked up black men for nonviolent marijuana charges for years. Countless of them. And then laughs about smoking weed, which means that if she had tried herself, she would be in prison, not running for president. She's a freaking hypocrite, bro. This woman, because she wanted to protect her record, literally went out of her way to block evidence that she knew would exonerate a death row inmate. Dude was about to get killed, murdered, done for a crime he did not commit. Harris knew it and blocked the evidence until another judge forced the evidence to be admitted, and that person was exonerated. This woman doesn't care about people, bro. She never has. She cares about her record, her appearance, and her priorities. But we got a bunch of silly people out here thinking she's the best choice for the country, and she cares about black people. She cares about Americans. She cares about women. Stop it. You can say whatever you want about Donald Trump, and there's a lot to say, but you can't tell me this dude doesn't follow through to the best of his ability for the people that he says he's going to. This man right now has literally shown up at the sites of the disaster. None of our sitting politicians have been there.
What
Donald
disaster are we
Trump
talking about?
has the hurricane, people impacted by the hurricane. I believe he's been to multiple places and he showed up and showing support to the people that are being impacted by these hurricanes. Neither the vice president nor the sitting president have done anything in regards to that. The 13 families who died with the whole Afghanistan debacle. The Biden administration, zero outreach, has not talked to them, will not talk to them, will not address their concerns, will not answer their question. Donald Trump has called personally every single one of them, not being the president at the time, years before he was in a political campaign. He called them. He went and visited them personally. You can say what you want about that dude, but his actions demonstrate he cares about the people that he says that support him. Now, you can agree or disagree with whether or not that's true, because at the end of the day, I don't know this dude's heart. This dude might be sitting there talking crap about Republicans when nobody's looking. He may be doing that. I don't know. What I do know is that his actions reflect his words. The Democratic Party, okay, in these topics, we'll talk about specifically what I'm referring to. When you talk about the Democratic Party, homie, they don't, dude. They just don't. And again, I'm not a big political dude. I'm really not. I think all of this stuff is BS. I really do think it's a game. I just happen to believe that in this example, Trump's just the guy who doesn't play on the team. Travis, you asked me a question earlier. Jonah was talking. Why do I feel like that Trump is doing this, right? I said why I feel like Harris is doing this because I think she just got picked. I don't think she's in charge of anything. You're insane to me if you think Biden's still running the country right now. Biden's taking a nap, homie. That's all he's doing. Biden is not running anything, and he has not, maybe ever, arguably. But he's definitely not right now. But nobody wants to talk about the fact that our sitting president has checked out. This guy is not even there anymore, right? I think Trump's doing it. Personally, my belief, the reason it's him and nobody else is for two reasons. One, he's the only one willing to fly in the face of the system as much as he is, because anybody who tries is going to get treated like this. Period. That's why everybody just folds to the system. You think this whole Diddy situation is a coincidence, bro? You think the fact that Diddy's been doing this for 20 years and everybody knew, Weinstein was doing it for 20 years and everybody knew, now they're talking about Oprah's about to get implicated in this? Bro, are you going to sit here and tell me when it comes to all of these situations, bro, that nobody knew this? Everybody knew it, Jonah. Why didn't they say anything? Because the powers that be know when to keep their mouth shut. And when you go against those powers, you usually get shut down. I think Donald Trump happens to have the resources and maybe some of the evidence, right? Because he's been around these people for so long. He may have some stuff in his back pocket. Maybe he just got the money. I don't know what it is, but I think he is one of the few people that has the ability to fight back. I think most people don't have the resources to fight back, and they'll just get shut up. They'll get disappeared. I think that's what would happen with most people. Or they play the position. You think George Bush is any different than Joe Biden, in my opinion? No, homie. George Bush, Barack Obama, all of the Bushes, they're all on the same team, bro. They're all on the same team. So this is not a left or right issue for me. That's why I tell you I'm not like a right guy, because I think George Bush is the same as Obama, right? They're on the same team. They're just
I don't think Republicans like George Bush anymore. I don't think a single Republican even cares about George Bush or likes him. I mean, I would say, all that's great and all that, but I think we need to do the research where I show you where Trump completely tried to steal the last election, because that's more important than me. To honestly, Middle Eastern wars, abortion, all of that stuff, in the end, what's the most important, and this is the defining issue for me, right? Because you were talking about like what rank I order things in, is the integrity of our elections is probably one of the highest. The integrity of the republic is more important than World War III. We could get through World War III. If we lose the republic, we lose America. Game over, right? Now, so all of y'all think I'm crazy for thinking that, and I have 4 hours of research that Quijano's hiding from y'all. But
I'm terrified. I'm terrified. I'm shaking in my tongue.
Willingly tried to steal the election by submitting fake electors, tried to convince fucking Pence to accept the fake electors in order to create chaos and then have it sent to the House of Representatives to decide who the president was. And there is a whole plan. And literally there are memos of this plan that Trump knew about, and we're going to talk about it whenever
We're going to
John
talk about it.
actually looks
So,
about it.
Jonah, the summary is you think that you are against anybody who tries to disrupt the integrity of our republic, of the sanctity of our nation. Those people are the problem.
Yes. Those
Okay.
people are much more the problem than
Here's
anyone
the
else.
question. If hypothetically, randomly, you found out that it wasn't Trump, but it was your side, would you feel the same way, or would you start singing a different tune like a little birdie with no backbone?
I would definitely think it's the same. And if this is about illegal immigration and illegal immigrants voting, show me why the court cases weren't proved when he thought the election was stolen. I don't know why none of these fucking court cases went through if it was such a big fucking issue. These are Trump elected judges. So yeah, I mean, I would, if 100%,
Yo, Jonah just legit bounced. Complete Chuck Deuces. One of a couple things happened.
God,
oh, there we
damn
go.
it.
I
God
was
damn
about to
it.
talk so much shit about you, bro. It was like I had the floor. I was about to go in.
No, sorry. The deep state got to me for a second. I got him though.
The man.
I care about it on both sides. Look, dude, all the illegal immigration shit you're showing me this time around, I don't think that's good. If actually if you can show me that millions upon millions of illegal immigrants are voting and Democrats are purposefully bussing them in order to win the election, I would be incredibly against it. And then I would become like, I probably would just not vote for anyone. I'd be like, our democracy's fucked either way. That's what I would think.
That's dumb.
I don't know why, if that happened, Trump wasn't able to prove it in court, though. That seems fucking weird to me when it's in front of Trump elected judges. This is Georgia. This is not fucking California where these court cases were happening. This was Georgia. This was North Carolina. These are Republican states usually. So that's my feelings on it. I think last time, I don't know if that's how I feel. So like, show me that millions of illegals voted.
So here's my question for you. Question number one. You said, if I can show you, if I can prove to you. My question is, why aren't you trying to prove it to yourself? Why aren't you willing to do your own homework? If you see the evidence out there and you know it's possible, why don't you care enough to find out for yourself? Why does somebody else have to prove it to you? Is that just willingness, blind ignorance?
Because in my opinion, if Republicans can't prove it in court, it's probably BS.
I'm talking about the immigrants voting.
Right. Are you talking about for this time around, or are you talking about for
next time?
Well, last time Trump tried to prove it in court 30 times or whatever the fuck, and he wasn't able to do it, which to me proves, why the hell am I going to do more research than the court of law that is actually entitled to doing?
5 million new immigrants being flown in, getting free housing, and getting recorded on the record as saying they plan on voting in this election, even though they are admittedly on the same recording telling us they are here illegally.
So that's what I'll say. To answer your question, actually answer your question, why am I not going and doing the research, is because Republicans have been claiming this for decades. This isn't new.
Bro, a Republican didn't film that to send you that video,
no,
bro.
Let me finish.
Okay.
Republicans have been claiming illegals have been voting in millions for years. So far, whenever it's brought into a court or it's ever contested, there seems to be no fucking evidence and it doesn't get anywhere. That's why I'm like, okay, if the court of laws aren't fucking showing anything, unless you think all the courts are just like screwed, which I don't believe, then
it wasn't all of them, it was a handful.
Whatever courts decided this, and a lot of them were Trump elected judges, I do know that, then I'm not going to spend time researching what seems to be a debunked theory. Now, you're 100% right. If it's what you're saying could be 100% true this time around. Maybe the past times it wasn't true, and then this time it is true, and it's a problem. That's why I'm not like taking the time right now to do that research, is because I've heard the same thing over and over again, and it keeps being disproved falsely. And I got like shit to do. That's why I'm saying if somebody actually proves it this time around, and like maybe there are 25 million this time around, and it wasn't like the exact same thing when Obama was being elected, and the exact same thing when they even said, I think they said it even when Trump was getting elected and he won. I'm pretty sure they were saying it. And even when and last time around. So that's how I feel. That's why it's like, dude, I can't keep, you've already been proven wrong, then like, I'm not going to spend time keep looking at your shit. Like, bring it to me when you have it and I'll look at it. I will look at it. It's not like I'm going to hide my face, but that's why I'm not doing it, is because it's been proven wrong over and over again. So like, unless this time around you got different evidence,
how many times
you might be right.
Yeah, but this is just intellectual responsibility that you're pawning off for someone else to do the work and making it sound like it's logical because you have shit to do. You know how many years people tried to claim that Roundup was causing cancer? You know how many people got sick and died?
I've never heard of that in my entire life.
There you go. This is my point, because you live in a little make-believe fairy tale bubble where the world is clean and people tell you the truth.
Keanu, why do you think that Trump didn't try to steal the last election and you didn't know about any of that until I gave you the research?
We can talk about that. We'll go into that. But here's my point, bro.
Why didn't you find the research? It was intellectually irresponsible for you to not have done the research.
Because I 100% believe, with obvious evidence, in my opinion, which we can discuss, that the election was stolen. Because to this point, do you, first of all, do you actually believe that Biden was capable of garnering as many votes as he did? This guy couldn't get 50 people to show up to a freaking rally. Trump's rallies to this day have lines for hours. Biden couldn't get 50 people in a senior citizen center on pudding night to show up to sit here and listen to him talk.
Okay.
Right? Harris has to literally pretend it's a concert and then accidentally show up at the back end. But yeah, 80 million people voted for dude. Got you. But are you going to talk about the fact? I wouldn't be surprised if you didn't see this.
Kiana, because you still haven't answered my question. Why can he prove any voter fraud in court?
That's a different conversation we'll address on the day. But here's my question to you.
That's a huge issue.
It is, which we'll address when we have time to address it. But here's my question to you. Did you see the in multiple states videos of people who worked at election offices grabbing ballots and throwing them in the gutter, throwing them in the garbage?
I saw the videos, and I saw some of these videos, and some of them were proven to be fake, and then some of them I didn't see anything other than that, right? So that's what I saw. But again, if these I cannot stand, because videos can be doctored. You have to, when you go to court, you have to prove things are true. Do you agree or disagree? How much do you trust the court system? I don't know how much you trust. Do you think the court system is good?
You realize that Kamala Harris was a judge in the court system that incarcerated a bunch of people. She also was ready to let someone lose their life. So yes, that's the court system you're telling me to defend was going to let someone die if a third party didn't have the power to have the wherewithal to intervene.
Just let me finish the question real quick, and then we got to end this because I'm tired. It's 9:40. Did you watch any of those court cases where they went through these videos? I watched one. I didn't watch all of them. I watched one, and it just showed them being like, no, this is fucking something completely different, right? So, okay, am I going to just believe the video, or am I going to believe the people who are analyzing the videos in the court system right now to determine whether there's voter fraud or not? And if they all say it's not happening, and the executive appoints judicial appointments when they're vacant, not just Supreme Court, other ones too. These are Trump. They got appointed by Trump. So they're biased towards your side. Why are they not enjoying whatever? You love Trump, dude. Come on. I'm so tired of this. I'm not.
I have a pair of Trump underwear that I wear every day.
Over it, dude. I'm so over it. Anyways, these are more likely to be biased conservative judges, and they threw it out, and this is the defining one for me. I mean, I'm sorry, I'll watch a video, but if it's shown in court that it's not real, then no, it's not fucking real.
Okay,
it's not.
Let's go back to your question. The first one that you avoided, the second one that you also stepped away from.
What
you asked me, do I trust the court system? The same court system that had a third party not intervene would have killed an innocent person, because Kamala Harris was okay with letting an innocent person
It
die.
has nothing to
to
do with the
protect
last
her record.
election. All right.
No. Does that, in your extremely intelligent brain, demonstrate the fact that the court system is fallible and gets it
It
wrong
is fallible.
every day?
That is correct. The court case system is fallible.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's fine. So when you ask me if I trust the court system, that's my answer. Because you could probably point to, I don't know, hundreds, maybe thousands a day. I don't know how many court systems court cases go through on any given day throughout the country. I have no clue what that number is. Is it hundreds of thousands? Is it millions? I would argue that there's thousands that are wrong every single day. Every single day. Now, they also aren't with the same focus as the Trump one. So that is a different
Right.
conversation. But here's my
Right.
point, bro. Here's my point. For a long time, there were class action lawsuits against Roundup for killing people and causing cancer. You know what happened multiple times? They won the court cases. And then until they lost.
Yes.
Until
systems are
they
fallible.
lost.
You are correct.
But here's my point. At the end of the day, the truth was Roundup was killing people and giving them cancer. And they won repeatedly until they lost. So my question to you is, what's more important, winning the court case or finding the truth?
Finding
Because
the truth, but why do you think you're able to find the truth better than the court case is?
And that's the conversation we will get to, which we need to get to. You have been prepared for this longer than I have. I will credit you that. But this is my point, bro. You can't come out here, in my opinion, and try to present this argument like because the court case was wrong, people are stupid for still not questioning it. And that's the tone. That was the undertone when you said it. It's the undertone when everybody on that side says it. Oh, well, the court case was won. Obviously, you're stupid for still believing in these conspiracy theories. And there's countless conspiracy theories that turned out to be true after court cases were won. So forgive me if I don't just blindly believe it. Go up, but there was a court case. It must be true, right? That is not the determining factor for truth. And to that same point, Jonah, that right there is exactly, bro, exactly why I think it's intellectually irresponsible and honestly lazy for you to use court cases as a scapegoat to think for yourself. If you have seen videos come in to your inbox and you're watching these videos and it shows immigrants saying, I am not illegal or I'm not legal. I'm not a legal citizen of the United States, but I plan on voting in the election. And there's going through apartment buildings and there's multiple videos. For me, a human being has to make the choice. I'm either going to just close my eyes to anything that doesn't match my agenda, or I'm going to say, you know what? I don't like this. It's going to be a lot of work, but
it might be true. Like, it might be true. Like, I'm not saying you're wrong, but like what I've seen is several illegal immigrants saying they're going to vote for Kamala Harris. That's what you've shown me in videos. Okay, that's bad. Now I have to see, well, is Kamala Harris or even the Democratic Party purposefully bringing in illegal immigrants to vote for them? I'm going to say this. Usually, the other side will provide evidence for what they believe. And then I just look at that. For me to have to research it when it's been disproven in the past seems like a stretch, right? Well, you put those videos in. Sorry, my camera's there. You put those videos in, but I haven't seen, I still haven't seen any. You've talked about it on the podcast before, and I would love to see it. I'm not like against seeing the info.
Yeah.
But you've talked about on the podcast about 25 million people being flown in, but I have I don't have the time to research every single claim.
No, of course, I get that.
So if that's true, it's something that I've seen being disproven in the past. Instead of just videos of like going apartment complex to apartment complex, let's go into like, okay, what's the evidence for 25 million? That would be actually really interesting to me, right? To blame me for not having done the research, I think is a little unfair because there's research you haven't done. Like all the research I've done in terms of the how
The one
Trump
topic.
tried to steal the
The
last
one
election.
singular topic.
Well, I'm just saying, like, you haven't done it, right? But it's unfair to blame me for not having done the research either, right? I think this is just a common human thing. That's why I'm like, okay, Quijano, it's like, it seems like you have done the research, right? I'm assuming so because you believe it passionately that this is happening. So it's like, okay, like, you should be able to show it to me pretty easily, and we could do a whole podcast on it, right? Like, that's how I feel about it, is the person who believes something strongly should have evidence for whatever they believe, right? That's why I was like, I believe Trump is a dictator. I'm going to stand on this. And you're like, okay, bring some fucking evidence. And then I do the 4 hours of research, right? And then you try to hide it. So that the question,
Hold you down, bro.
that's how I view it. I don't think it's necessarily fair to just be like, hey, Jonah, why don't you do the research? I'm like, okay, dude, like, it's like, I can, and also, like, it's something I've seen disproven in the past, so I've got like shit to do, right? There is a boy who's cried wolf type of thing eventually.
Yeah, I hear you, but this for me, I think the issue is, and you're right, like it is unfair for me to, and I'm really more generalizing when I say it, right? It's unfair for me to point, you should know everything, because nobody can, right? Like we do have things to do in our lives that are more important. And I've said repeatedly, politics are really not that important to me. I think our lives are our responsibility, and we should all be helping each other, because at the end of the day, none of these people really care about us, but we should be caring about each other. This is why we talk about this, right? Because we vehemently disagree, but it's still love. We still joke about it. We still joke. We're still
we have a
friends,
great
right?
time in the WhatsApp chat.
Yeah. So like, but this is how it should be. And the country's been lost in that, because I think the powers that be have done a great job of dividing us over shit that should not be this divisive. But because we're not intellectually independent enough to be able to stop that from happening, we fall into the trap. We get played. And it's crazy to me when I look at people whose intelligence I respect. I don't care who you vote for, right? But who you decide to vote for, if in my opinion, is your decision. You have that right as an American. It's how this country is supposed to be built.
Come on.
Right? No. It's the reason why. When people say shit like, oh, well, it's because we share values. No, the fuck you don't. Stop it. You sound stupid, right? They do not share your values. I don't think that that's true. When people don't look at the fact people are now going from realizing that Kamala Harris actually did a lot of negative things for the black community, and those same people are actually thinking she's an advocate for the black community. Like, I see this in chats. I'm in a lot of hip hop groups, and right, hip hop groups have a lot of similar demographics.
Nano's black. Like, his family's black. I just don't know if you guys know that. That's just the truth. He showed me his black relatives, unless the photo was doctored. I'm
my dad's side of the family is extremely dark skinned, and my grandpa's got an afro.
Why are you hiding? Why are you I'm just not. Why'd you say it so weirdly? Dark skin.
Look, my dad is not Jamaican. They are very dark Puerto Ricans. You know, somebody gonna get mad if you don't specifically say it, right? I do not have any Indian heritage to my knowledge. But yeah, like, here's the thing, bro. So when you go into these communities, right? Also, Jonah wants to hide the bars that I dropped, bro. Y'all didn't hear it. It was straight fire. It was straight fire. It'll never be released, but it was fire.
You can release it. I'm not going to stop you. I just think it's a terrible idea. I just think it's. I think you can release the bars. Like, I won't stop you.
When I listen in these hip hop groups, and I'm listening to these people, and I'm like, holy crap! These same people was not long ago talking about how she hates black people. And then there was the gentleman, the black guy, who got put to death recently. And I literally watched these people say, oh, do you think Kamala would jump in? People were sitting there actually believing this woman was going to step in and help a black man from getting off a death row. And in my brain, I'm like, how naive do you have to be? This was the same woman that was letting a black man die on death row on her watch when she knew he was innocent. But these same people think she's going to come to this man's rescue because they believe the lies. I don't care if you have a different opinion from me and you've actually organically come to that opinion. But when you're out here just getting played willingly and you coming up with good excuses as to why you deserve to get played, right? That's no different than somebody in an abusive relationship saying, no, but they really love me. And they just happen to beat the shit out of you a lot of times. Like, at some point, when do you acknowledge they don't care about you? You know what I mean? Now, obviously, I'm grossly generalizing, and there's a lot more nuance to that. But when it comes to politics, there's not. Not in this
Yeah.
particular
I
circumstance.
just
They
think- I
don't care
just-
about it.
I agree with you. I just think Trump is the exact same. That's my personal opinion. I think politicians don't truly care about you. When I said she has more of the same values, I meant that more as just like she agrees with more of what I think should happen in the country. It's really what I meant by that.
But she doesn't. She doesn't agree with those things. She
Okay.
only will do what she's told because those are the
Maybe.
agendas that are being funded right now. But that being said, we need to talk about this.
We need to end this. So we need to.
Yeah,
get
so we got to talk about your Travis. By the way,
Should we just do? Are you ready for the research next week? Do you think we can do it?
I will try to do it by next week. Yeah. If not by next week, it'll definitely be the week after. But it needs to be done. Not if it's one of the next two. Let's make it a commitment. If not
It
next week,
has
the week
to,
after.
because like
It has
the
to.
election
It
will
has
be
to.
at the next one, and I
We
need you Trump people to see my research and at least know
Trump
it.
people? Is that racist? I think that's racist.
And that's not a race.
You Trump people.
You
All right, bro.
people.
I mean, I'm just saying, be comfortable with your racism. That's fine. Yeah, it was white privilege talking right there.
I need because this is my only opportunity to speak to the Trumpians. I don't know what what do you guys call yourselves at the clubs, you know? Like I don't know. I'm not invited. You guys don't invite me to your Trump clubs, you know? Keanu, real quick, the real question is why don't you invite me to the Trump clubs?
Honestly, I don't think I'm invited, dog. I'm not part of the Cool Kids Club. If I did it, I got you though. You can come through.
Anyways, we'll release it. We'll have a good time. That'll either be next week or the week after. We'll decide on.
We got to talk about dogs and cats.
I also want to talk about. We have a really good business topic. I really want to. I think Gianmarco, what we were talking about right before this started, would be really interesting too. So if you get too busy and you can't read my research or not respond or whatever,
let's do it. Let's do it. It's got to get done.
Okay,
it's got to get done. You either have to win people to the left, or I got to win people to. I don't know what we're doing.
I'm not even look. I think it's incredibly hard for people to change their minds. I think it's insanely hard. I don't think I may change one person's mind with this research. I'm going for that one person who's not sure. Everyone who's already made up their mind, I'm cool with it. I get it. Whatever I present, it doesn't really matter. I'm just going for the one person who's like, okay, Jonah's bringing the heat. Can he actually back it up? I'm talking to that person right now. You know? So anyways.
Just so you understand how we get down over here, bro. Just so you understand what it's like. What's really going down.
That's cute. Very cute. That's
nobody
hilarious.
does Yorkies like we do Yorkies.
Right. This
All
is
right,
the
man.
right here. Here's
Any
the
last
thing.
words?
I love you. I appreciate
you
you.
too.
You're extremely attractive. That's what Travis said. I thought it was weird that he put
I gotta
that in
get
the
back
chat,
to this
but-
girl on Hinge, bro. She's been waiting for the response.
Oh, tell her Trump 2024 and see what she says.
She will for sure immediately
You're
block
in
me.
Denver, bro. You're basically in mountain San Francisco.
Wait, okay, real quick story, which was really, 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 really funny. You know Marco, right? Do you know Marco Rivera? He visited me in Denver, and he's like, "Why are all the bathrooms man, women, and other?" He was like, "I don't get why isn't there a single man's bathroom? Am I invited into this room?" It was really funny. I was.
Yeah, Denver went all the way
Really
in, bro. All right, so we're going Trump threat to democracy, maybe eating dogs and cats. Next couple of weeks are going to be good. Guys, come hang out. Travis, usually we have people come hang out. This is just like a late podcast. Would love to have you up here one time and just kind of talk about your opinion on that topic. Maybe if we have enough time on the threat to democracy one, we can leave time at the end, bro, for people to come up and give their opinions. I think that would be a decent one for people to give their perspectives on it as well, if we have enough time for that.
That'll be hard, but we can try.
Yeah, it'll be tough because it's going to be a full one. But guys, we're looking to do this. Days will be changing soon. Should we announce that this week, next week? What are we doing? Jonah's checked out.
No. It's a late one. So I'd say let's next week do Tuesday and then week after Wednesday, just because like this one started at a weird time. I want it to be for the right people who just know the time to get a chance. But yeah, very soon, guys, we're going to be changing to Wednesday, not next week, but probably the week after. That's
You
what
want to tell everybody why? Like the actual reason?
I want to join the rock climbing club.
You want to
That's
tell
why.
everybody why? Like the actual reason? That's what we're going with?
Oh,
Okay, we can
I'm trying to get more girls, baby. We're trying to get a fucking girlfriend out here, dude.
Jonah's trying to get laid, and
Trying to get
apparently
laid.
we're blocking his. We're like
You're
the ultimate cock block.
me.
Is the proper
You're not
Paradox
the ultimate
podcast.
cock block.
The ultimate cock block, because we're making him avoid rock climbing, because apparently you can only get girls if you rock climb in Denver.
Bro,
did not know
I'm
that.
just saying it's a good place. There are baddies at the rock climbing gym. What can
I mean,
say?
hey, and you get all angles before the date, so I guess that's also a W. That's inappropriate, Jonah. Anyways, Prophet in Paradise podcast, episode 21. We're going to be back
We're
next week.
out.
Love y'all. Tell everybody about it. See y'all next time. Peace.